Welcome to Watching the Throne.
A lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
My name's Chris Lambert.
My name's Travis Bean, and Chris, I'm both excited today and a little nervous.
Why is that, Travis? I know why you're excited, but why so nervous?
I mean, obviously I'm excited to talk about Come to Life. It's a classic Kanye song. You know, every once in a while you get one of those moments where it's like, you're getting a Jesus Walks, you're getting a Runaway, you're getting a Ghost Town. Like the second you hear Come to Life, the second it comes on, you know it's a classic Kanye track. And, you know, we've read through the lyrics, we're lyrical guys, and we understand the catharsis coming through lyrically, but I do not know how to express to our listeners how this song is so cathartic musically. And I'm afraid we're going to let everybody down.
Ooh, I know exactly what you mean. We don't have those qualifications, but I know someone who does, you know?
Really?
I think I should have been hiding for those watching on video. I should have been hiding and then making some kind of grand entrance.
Yeah, that's very true. The video people are just like, I see Cole's just right there. But
I'm used to the audio medium. I always forget. I'm forgetting that people can see us, but okay.
Yeah.
Suspense has been killed.
But yeah,
Cole's here.
Podcast people, we have Cole Cuchna from the Dissect podcast here to discuss Come to Life with us and the piano stuff. You're very excited about this piano, aren't you?
I'm very excited about the piano stuff. I was initially excited about the piano stuff. Now I'm excited about something much larger going on tonally, which I'll save. But there's some really, really, really cool stuff happening musically with this song. So yeah, can't wait to get into it.
Yay.
Nice.
I requested to come on. I forced my way on to this episode.
That's very true. We when we asked, we're like, any episodes you want to be on? Just like Come to Life.
Yep.
Just
Straight
that
away.
one.
Yeah.
Hey, are you recording Come to Life? When is Come to Life?
Yeah.
It's just like
3 months from now. We'll
Yeah.
record the Come to Life episode 3 months from now.
yeah. Are you still as excited about this song 3 months after release as you were when it first came out?
Yeah. Especially after digging into it this past couple of weeks, knowing that I was coming on here. It's like it's a debate in my head. I mean, it's one of those unanswerable questions. What's Kanye's best song? But like, this is in the running, which is saying a lot. You know,
Yeah.
even to put it into that that upper echelon of best song for Kanye. Like, there's so many of those in contention, and just to me, it was like that when I first heard it, LP3. You know, you always wonder, are you getting caught up with like the visuals and like how's this going to translate on the album? Because that moment was just so beautiful, right? Like when we all saw that for the first time. But then every time I hear it on the album, I'm like, this is the one. This is the one. And the way that
it has
the way
that
that
feeling for sure.
And I mean, we're going to talk about it, but like the way that the whole album essentially builds to this moment, and then all the payoffs that he does in it, it's like you can build to something all you want, but that thing better pay it off, and obviously this does on so many levels. So
Yeah, totally. I think I talked about this on the first episode we did on Donda, but like when you experience like that kind of Kanye song, like to me I had this moment listening to Ghost Town, and it isn't always necessarily the first time I hear the song. Like there's just this moment that happens sometimes when like the album coalesces, you realize what's happening, and like a song just kind of like hits that spot. And Ghost Town did that for me once. I remember I remember it so vividly. I was walking home from work, and we were going to do the Ghost Town episode. I think maybe that was the day we were going to do it. I don't know, but it just like it hit me, and like the floodgates open. I started crying. Like it's just like one of those those kinds of Kanye songs have that effect to me, and that happened to me of Come to Life because I hadn't really had a chance to listen to the album when it first came out. Like I kept trying. I was like so busy with like all this stuff, and I was going out on a really long run one day, so I had a chance to listen to the album like twice. And I put it on, and then like I felt like I was experiencing the album for the first time. And then when Come to Life hit, like I was, you know, I'm running, sweating, and crying. Like I look like a complete idiot. And it's just like, it's so incredible that Kanye can keep pulling that off album after album. Like Come to Life, just, it's so, and it's the catharsis. Like that's really what it is. It's this big giant build, this musical build, this lyrical build, to something that just like it makes everything click. It makes you understand. And it's just so incredible that he's able to do that every time. I love it.
Yeah, and it's surprising to me that it's not. I think among Kanye fans, we kind of all understand how important this song is and how good it is. But statistically speaking, it's not the most streamed. It's it's actually one of the lower streamed songs on the album, which I have mixed feelings about Donda Deluxe, but one positive about it is Come to Life's higher up in the track list, because I think a lot of the reason why it's not as popular is because it's buried under whatever 20 tracks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So hopefully Donda Deluxe, if people are actually listening to that, it gets a little more shine, because for everything you just said, it's an important song.
Yeah.
It's just, what a emotionally, I mean, you think about the epics in Kanye's discography from, or like even closing songs on Kanye's discography, right? Like,
Lost in the World.
Yeah, Lost in the World's an emotional one. Bound 2's like a pretty one, but also like has its jokes, has its lines. But just Bound 2 in terms of Yeezus is such, like, you get music, right? For the first time in that album, you're getting music. And then St. Pablo is so great. Last Call, Big Brother, Gone. Oh God, I just like Come to Life feels like a very fitting finale in a discography that's full of very powerful closing songs. But it's also one of the, I think, the most emotionally complex in terms of not just hitting like a high note like Last Call does, and not just hitting a low note like Pinocchio Story does, but you're really getting this mixed bag of, I am mourning something that has ended, but I am also strong, damn it. And like, I understand what I did wrong finally. So it's like taking responsibility for things that happened, learning from things that happened, mourning things that happened, while also like moving forward with your head held high and feeling confident that like you can be okay. It's just, you think about what's the line, like, you're not your mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this seems a song that's like perfectly indicative of that. And then you have some of the most emotional lines that we've ever gotten from Kanye, and then like arguably one of the most poetic lines that we've ever gotten from Kanye. So it's quite the jam.
Oh yeah, love it. Love every second of it.
Though it's not in my, unlike a lot of other people, it's not in my top 3 songs on this album. And you see so many people comparing it to Runaway and being like, it's up there, like with Runaway as perhaps the best Kanye song.
Yeah, I feel like that's the thing with like, I don't know. I mean, if it doesn't hit you in that way, it just doesn't hit you in that way. But I almost feel like on some level, you just understand that Come to Life is an important Kanye song, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like your favorite kind of song musically, which I could totally get. Like, the song's mostly piano. It's not like a rap song or anything. But I guess if it's able to transcend musically for you, then it would hit that spot. But for me, it definitely does. Like, getting this kind of song from Kanye and him doing it so well. I mean, especially at the end of this album, which is so full of like, I don't know, we'll get into it, but I think this song just hits like a special spot that to me transcends like a good Kanye song should.
Yep.
Hey, can I jump in here? You probably have to cut this, but I do want to play some piano. I have to play some piano actually live, and I forgot to plug it in.
Okay.
Am I cool to, you can splice this out, right? You guys have that capability?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. I don't know if you like mark where you guys need to edit, but
oh no, I usually just I'll write it down.
Sorry, I got caught up in the other all that exporting that I forgot to do this part.
Also, if you've listened to this show, though, we are no strangers to just dumb random shit happening in the middle of a podcast and disrupting everything. So.
Well, then if you don't want to edit, just buy some time.
Yeah. One of the cool things about Come to Life is that the song title has 3 words in it, you know?
Trifecta.
Actually, right? I mean, and you go through the album and you see a number of times where it's just like 1 word, sometimes where the song titles have 2 words, a few times where it has 3, and then on the rare occasion 4. Like, what's up with that?
I mean, but if you really look at it, the best songs in the album have 3 words. You've got Off the Grid, you've got Come to Life, and you've got Tell the Vision.
Heaven and Hell.
Oh yeah, Heaven and Hell. There you go. I mean, more proof.
Hey, can you guys? I actually might have found a faster way, guys. Can you guys hear this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good. Like enough. Like
oh yeah.
It's pretty clear. Okay, cool. We'll just do that.
Yeah.
Then.
Okay.
We're ready then. Sorry.
No, we're good.
If we leave this in, I'm sorry.
We had a fun little side discussion.
All right, so Come to Life. We are on track 22 of 23. So the penultimate song, and for the way that we've been treating the album, kind of like the final song, with No Child Left Behind being more of an outro, like epilogue, conclusion to everything else. The same way that Donda Chant is more of an intro and prologue to everything, but that the album itself, the main body, runs from Jail to Come to Life. And like, what a journey that this has been. We've talked about the album essentially having 2 major arcs, or 2 major acts, and then a few arcs within that. And so you have Jail through Heaven and Hell being the first part of the album, and then, or Donda Chant through Heaven and Hell being the first part of the album, and then Donda through No Child Left Behind being the second part of the album. And everything between Jail and Moon is really setting the stage of Ye working through a lot of his grief, anger, like the dark thoughts that are coming up, like some of his antagonisms towards others. And it's just him kind of bouncing back and forth in this emotional state before the second half of the album really is him finding the groove. And in the words of Baby Keem, like, let's get right. Like, he finally gets right in the second part of the album, as you can even see it in the song titles, right? Like, Keep My Spirit Alive, Jesus Lord, New Again, Tell the Vision, Lord I Need You, Pure Souls, Come to Life. They're all this biblical implications, religious implications, faith, a rekindling of faith, renewal of faith, that's very much in contrast with some of the darker aesthetic in the early portion of the album, and the push and pull between like devil and God, angels and demons. So it's just, what an epic journey to go from going through all the different aspects of the darker emotions of that first part to the second part. And we talk about the multiple levels that the album's kind of operating on, in terms of getting at not just Ye's personal life and his personal journey and relationship with his mom, with Kim, but also his relationship with the industry and society, and starting to look at the album not just as that personal journey, the way that you might write like Ye or Kids See Ghosts, that are much more kind of self-reflective and small and meditative in that way, like very personal with some extrapolation to the larger macro. But here the album's so long because he's getting into so much of this stuff and really commenting on these different layers in a way, something that he sets up kind of in Jail and just starts to go through it. So the first arc that we saw was Donda Chant through Hurricane, and then the second one was Praise God through Believe What I Say, then 24 through Heaven and Hell, Donda through Tell the Vision, and now Lord I Need You through No Child Left Behind. And you're seeing things at the beginning be a little like, here are the tensions, kind of the extremes. And then in that second arc, you're seeing a lot of the antagonism rear its head. The third arc is the I'm admitting I have a problem arc. And then from Donda through Tell the Vision, it's I want to get good. Like, I want things to be okay. Let's get my life in order. And then Lord I Need You through No Child Left Behind is my life is now like where I need it to be and want it to be moving forward. With Pure Souls being this payoff on becoming new again. And Come to Life really like paying off on elements of jail, God breathed, praise God, and new again, keep my spirit alive in Jesus Lord. So, whew.
Yeah, it's a very biblical interpretation even of the structure, right? It reminds me of like, within this larger text of the Bible, there are individual books, right? And like each individual book has its own arc, and then you compiles to create this larger overarching arc with many arcs in between, right? With these different books. So I like that analysis because, yeah, I mean, I think my broad interpretation of the album is the initial one that I think you guys first had was Donda chant through Heaven and Hell, and then Donda through Come to Life / No Child Left Behind. I think there's probably multiple ways. It doesn't seem to me like at least in my opinion, like there's obviously an arc, but it's less because it's so massive. Well, it's smart the way that you guys are breaking it up because it makes it a little more manageable. But there does seem, I mean, I think the duality thing of heaven and hell, of dark and light, like that's definitely, in my mind, very clear with the track structure, with maybe those subplots kind of going on through those. But yeah, it's like, well, okay, I was going to ask about Donda Deluxe, but I'm not even going to go there. Actually, never mind.
Don't go there.
Yeah, dude, we're not going to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just to reiterate, the payoff, I just love how this all builds to this one just massive catharsis.
Yeah.
And even within Come to Life itself, there's an arc. Which we'll probably talk about, but it begins much differently than it ends, and so it's kind of a culmination of the larger arc. But then, it's that final scene in the movie. It's the last battle. He's obviously battling himself, battling society, going through a divorce, all that stuff. So it's kind of like that final scene in the movie.
Yeah. Chris, one thing you said that I really liked was just how, because we have talked about this a few times in the show, how especially the last few albums have felt very personal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's specifically talking about Kim and having a family and overcoming bipolar disorder and reconnecting with God. There are all these very specific things he's going through. But one of the amazing parts of Donda, and probably one of the reasons it is so expansive and ambitious, is that it has a much more communal feel, and that it really is trying to speak to people who are going through a similar situation Kanye is. He even says in Come to Life, ever wish you had another life. This song is climactic and cathartic, not just for him, but for an idea he's really exploring, and in a way he's trying to connect with people. And I think that's a really important part of this album. And a big reason we've seen him go through so many of these emotions that so many people could connect with, both dark and light emotions. And the reason he's painted so many situations that involve other people, like we saw him do in Jesus Lord, is that I think he's really trying to establish that connection. It really goes, while a lot of the plots we're seeing on the album involve him and Kim and him moving on from that, him dealing with the grief of losing his mom, him looking at just gun violence in society and figuring out how you lead people in such an antagonistic environment. Beyond all that, Kanye is within all that, Kanye is trying to find this connection with people. If he's going to come out the other side of this divorce alone, what does that mean? What opportunities does that give you? We heard him talk about that on Lord, I Need You. He has this chance at something new. He has this chance to become a pure soul, to come to life. All of the songs start relaying that idea. And I think that's a big part of this song, is while you could read just him talking to Kim and a lot of it, I feel a big part of this is just him talking to us, talking to the world, talking to God, looking for some sort of connection that goes beyond the physical and becomes spiritual, ethereal, some sort of connection you can establish that allows you to move on from this experience coming to life, like starting anew. It's so awesome that come to life becomes that. It becomes something like not ambiguous, but like indefinable. Like it isn't just this one relationship you have. Like it's the larger relationship. It's something communal. And this song just has that vibe the whole time. Just like from the piano to like the way he's talking, it feels so personal. Like he's right there in your ear, like speaking to you. It's incredible that he's able to channel that energy in a song.
Which on an album where a lot has been made about the features, and it seems that some people, some critics have downplayed the solo Kanye songs, or even like the verses Kanye has on those songs that have other great verses or other great features. This is definitely one of the standout moments where it's just like just Ye, just doing his thing.
Right.
It's like you kind of need that at this spot where, you know, if we didn't have this song and just went right from Pure Souls to No Child Left Behind, I think it's still like a very strong album, but you don't necessarily have that emotional core where you need Ye to be by himself and expressing something just like this.
Yeah, I think that's why it puts it into that upper echelon of like his songs, because, you know, Runaway, I guess, has Pusha T. I was trying to think of this kind of song where it's just him without a feature. It's kind of a short list, right? And that's why I really appreciate this song so much, because it is 100% him as vocalist. Obviously, there's other producers and stuff, but there's something to it being this lone man's journey, right? Like, Ye versus the world. And for everything to lead up to the album to this point, and then him stand alone, there's something really just intrinsically powerful about that fact, just the fact that he's alone, you know, kind of facing his demons one-on-one, again, to use the final scene in a movie analogy. You know, it's backs against the wall and him facing the world alone, you know, and what a fitting end to like an album where he is trying to be alone, you know, literally leaving Kim and trying to find a new way on his own. Obviously the metaphor is pretty ripe there.
Yep. It is indeed, which Travis, and what you were saying about this album being very communal, it just makes me think about like maybe even Ye's awareness of that. Thinking back to I Thought About Killing You, it was what was it? See, if I was trying to relate it to more people, I'd probably say I'm struggling with loving myself, because that seems like a common theme. And it's just like, ever wish you had another life is one of those things where it's like, see, if I want to relate it to more people, I will phrase it in this way where people can be like, yeah,
right.
Like I have felt that way at times, or like I do have regrets that I wish I could go back and change. So
yeah, right.
He's a self-aware king, to borrow some Twitter lingo.
It's definitely like you could feel him letting go of the ego in that way, that it's not just about him anymore. Like he's openly trying to connect with the listener of a line like that in a way he hasn't really done before.
Okay. Well, then we have no samples on this, which is nice. We just have I guess, well, maybe a YouTube sample. It's not really musical, but all of the like background church sounds that you hear are coming from a specific YouTube video, which is what? Congregation speaking in tongues when led by Holy Spirits, which, video recorded at the Joy of the Lord Worship Center in Victoria, Texas in 2011 and published by the Victoria Advocate, which, interestingly, the one that Genius links to was published August 29th, 2021, which was the day the album came out. But you're having that congregation sound, the church voices, the sense of a crowd. So it's funny because we're talking about like the isolation. It's just Ye, right? No features, no backing vocals from other people. Looking at you, Tyler, the Creator, on the deluxe. But you have this crowd that's there. Like, it's Kanye by himself, but he's not by himself. Like, the church is there. Like, the pastor that's speaking keeps coming through. So as much as there's a sense of isolation, there's not, which feels also very fitting in a song that's talking about like feeling the presence of God, and on an album that was talking about feeling the presence of God, and even like the presence of Donda, right? And you think about how alone Ye was on some of these songs, especially in the early parts of the album, or how empty some of the space, like God Breathed is one of those songs that feels like very empty, very ambient. And then you compare that to how full this one feels with just like the spirit and the presence of other people and the presence of the Lord through the church.
Yeah. It's a classic Kanye technique, I feel like, to, especially on this album, but I'm thinking of Ultralight Beam, like bringing in people, like actually connecting with God, bringing in this very real sense of spirituality. But on this album in particular, I mean, you've heard Donda a couple times, and the stories Kanye tells, like he does in Jesus Lord, like there is that very real sense of like people needing God, and then to have an actual connection here and come to life, like very meaningful.
Yeah, I think again, like the metaphor is perfect, right? That he's using people speaking in tongues, which in my just a little research, my understanding of it is like these people are supposedly filled with the Spirit of God, and then this Spirit talks through them in a language they can't understand. Obviously, this example is like we hear actual phrases, thank God and thank you, Jesus, like this kind of stuff. But like traditionally speaking, I think speaking in tongues is like this out of body experience where the Spirit is fills you, which is like exactly what's going to happen in the song, right? Like he's going to be reborn. He's going to talk about light as a metaphor for God, and welcoming God into him, and that's how he becomes reborn. That's the way he, the phoenix metaphor and the fire and all that. It's like it's a perfect touch to because the song would work without it, but it makes it so much more powerful, and it grounds it in something so much more universal and like spiritual. And yeah, it adds this extra layer that it's just one of those touches that very few can do.
Yeah. Like, right, I've never heard anyone attempt something like this. And I mean, maybe music is a broad category, but at least in like mainstream like pop and hip hop and all of that, and like the level of artist that Ye is, it's just very unique. And even the title, like Come to Life, is a huge payoff on things. We talked about how the second main song, the third track on the album, is God Breathed, right? And the idea of how that relates to Genesis, and specifically the birth of Adam and Eve. So when you go to Genesis and you start reading, it says, "This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Now no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up. For the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. But streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." So you have a song called God Breathed, which like is going into like, I know God breathed on this, I know God breathed on this, which is relation to the Bible. The idea of God breathing is bringing life to something, bringing energy, bringing vitality. I know God breathed on me. So having that reference at the beginning and then having this reference at the end to coming to life is very fitting. Even Off the Grid makes reference to Adam in the outro, albeit it's in a like humorous like joking way that isn't very like serious or come to lifey, but at least shows kind of an awareness of the Genesis story following God Breathe and adding a little bit of like playfulness to that dynamic, where like here it's just like very serious. And then on Praise God, you have Ye talking about, "We go praise our way out the grave, dog, living, speaking, praise God, walking out the graveyard back to life." So that's also setting up this idea that you have been in some ways dead. Yeah. Which, looking at the first song being Jail and the implications of jail, what we know on this album, as the album starts to get into the idea of being imprisoned, like physically, but also emotionally, spiritually, like socially, and how that relates to essentially like a concept of withering or death and like getting out of jail, right? Coming back to life. So Praise God even talks about like specifically like walking out the graveyard back to life. You have all those things kind of building all the way up. Like Jesus Lord even starts to get at some of this idea of getting over these struggles and this darkness and picking lights over darkness, life over death, especially when the kid in the story is at that moment where he has a weapon trained on the person that killed his brother and has this choice to make. Like, is he going to pick the path that's like life and he's granting life to this person and granting life to himself, or he's going to walk the darker path? So, man, like Come to Life is very climactic just in that way as well. Like when we're talking about the album building to this, it's literally setting up these little pieces over the course of the track list to get you in the mindset for like redemption, rebirth, coming back to life, not even getting into songs like New Again and Pure Souls and how that plays into it as well. So it's like the entirety of the album is just built around this concept, which if I think we were talking to any like biblical scholar, thinking about Femi here, co-writer of the Dissect season on Damn and
Black is King,
right? Yeah. And I think Femi would be talking about how is that just the New Testament is just kind of building up to the crucifixion, but the resurrection, right? And all of these promises of like being brought back to life and death not being the end of things, like believe in Jesus, believe in God, and you can transcend death. You can come back from the grave. So it's very like the whole album's very like biblical in that way.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that, just in terms of, you know, setting up, you know, Pure Souls, that outro of Pure Souls, which, you know, obviously you guys had just covered on the previous episode. It's the mantra of the, you know, the truth is the only thing you get away with. And then leading into Come to Life, which is the truth, right? Like in Kanye's mind, really setting up, you know, God is truth, God is life giver, breather, you know, everything coming to head here. Long term, all the way back from jail, but also immediate, just as previous as Pure Souls.
Yep. Yeah, and the idea even of like a pure soul becoming a new life, like you get some
right
nice connectivity between that. And yesterday when we were doing Pure Souls yesterday, Travis was talking about like anybody watching the video like apologizing for the amount of light that was pouring into his room.
It's just unstoppable. The world knows we're covering Come to Life today, so soon I'm just going to be washed in light.
Looks good.
It's very like I've just been seeing him over the last few minutes like slowly like creep out of the light, like trying to adjust.
I'm
going to
be slowly like tinkering my way around.
I think the idea is to step into the light, Travis.
Yeah. Stop running from the light. Stop running from the light.
The only thing I want to add to all this is I was thinking, Chris, when you're running through the album structure and this whole build to Come to Life and like what that means. I mean, a huge part of this is just Kanye's, it's about his connection with God. Like that's him coming to life. And so much of this album, we think of the first 10 songs where he's so antagonistic and but he's antagonistic because he's so fearful. He's being so vulnerable. He's openly asking for God to come in and help him so many times. And clearly, like, not much is happening. Like, he's still caught up in all of these terrible situations. And it isn't until that middle part of the album, thinking of specifically Remote Control, where he said, God just took my hand and had a bigger plan. Like, he's actually able to give up control to God and let him in. That becomes part of the build. And that's what makes the beginning part of the song so powerful. Like hearing people actually connecting with God, like it is the culmination of that journey Kanye's had. Like it's not easy to completely let yourself go, to let that ego go, to realize like God is going to guide you on the right path. Like that's how you come to life. So to start with that, I mean, Kanye just gets it. He knows what he's doing.
He does. So getting into the song itself, unless there's any production notes you want to get into up front, Cole.
So up front, no. I mean, obviously the organ's great. I mean, he's used it all album long, so there's not really any surprise there. I think the transition from organ to piano, which we're going to talk about, is really, really powerful. And there's a few reasons for that. Yeah, up front, I think I'm going to let's tackle some lyrics, and then there's some tonal stuff in terms of like harmony that I want to point out, but it'll make more sense once we kind of dig into the lyrics a little bit.
Okay. Cool. So we start with a clip from the church service. My soul cries out, hallelujah, and I thank God for saving me. I thank God for, which has some ultralight beam vibes, right? Just reconnecting to that. You were talking about it, like real life, real world pulls from like church service. But yeah, it also feels very, not successful, but like, and not cathartic, but it's just like a victorious in that way of like, he has made it through something. And in the aftermath, like, I want to thank God for saving me. Like, I have been saved. And we came up a little bit on Pure Souls. Like, you know, you saved me, I'm in this new spot. So it's kind of continuing a little bit as we've talked, like musically and now like kind of thematically and conceptually from Pure Souls. But we get the chorus starting. Here go all your problems again. 3, 2, 1, you're pinned. Which I, as a wrestling fan, you know, I just like.
I knew it. I knew you were going to make a wrestling comment.
Yeah,
I have it in my notes. Chris will be happy about this line.
Which, I mean, usually it's 1, 2, 3, so maybe it's not just a direct like wrestling reference. But, you know, in wrestling, you pin someone. Yeah. There's also the story, not to go like too far off track, but in Genesis 32 specifically, there's a story of Jacob wrestling with God.
Oh yeah,
and. Right. Yeah, that night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had set them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak, which is so casual, but like it's such a disturbing, like, you know, he's just like at this river and sends people over, and you know, a man wrestled with him till daybreak.
Man, the Bible is wild.
Yeah, like, where did this man come from? Did he just suddenly appear? Okay, so when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." Which, like, you picked this fight, bro. Like, you don't just get to say, "Let me go." And Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Which, like, big request. The man asked him, "What is your name?" Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." And yeah, that's it. But the idea of like wrestling with God is kind of a classic one. That scene from the Bible is pretty classic. So when you get like 3, 2, 1, you're pinned, and this idea of maybe wrestling coming up, it's easy to jump to that Bible story. It doesn't necessarily have to be calling back to Jacob, but also the idea of like, you know, your problems are weighing down on you. They have you pinned down, and you don't necessarily have the strength to kick out at this point. You're losing the match, you're losing the fights, and it's feeling overwhelming, I think is the more general interpretation of that line.
Yeah. It's a good build to the next lines too, because we're going to have this situation where someone does feel down and out. Yeah. And so the rest of the song becomes like, how do you rise out of that?
Yeah. And that's, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just point out word choice, right? Like, here go all your problems again. You're pinned, and then bridging into uncle, auntie, these universal, you know, ideas of like, he's not talking about himself exclusively. Yep. He's talking about the human struggle, right? I mean, like, we've all felt the way that we can all like, we have moments in our life this resonates with literally everybody that's ever been alive. So just right away you're getting that universal quality just by word choice.
Yep.
He could have easily said, "I'm pinned, my problems," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
My auntie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the like the great things that Ye does, and I always go on rants about like people not like usually only identifying great lyricists in hip hop as people that make like clever rhymes or like triple entendres or things like that. But this is like lyricism, the way that you can like go into the second person and mixing that with the first person to make an idea much more universal in nature, or cause the idea to connect a lot more strongly because you just chose those moments of the second person, or even going from something that's more conceptual and like, here go all your problems again, 3, 2, 1, you're pinned, which is kind of vague in it's not concrete, right? It's just a general idea of you have problems, you're pinned. But then he goes into an actual scene. It's not summary, it's scene of you have an uncle that's back in the pen, the auntie shut down again. So now it's going from concept to actual example, which is what Travis was talking about, and how powerful that can be. And just being able to bounce back and forth between like concept and example is a powerful thing as well. But yeah, uncle, now he back in the pen. In the pen would be jail. Right. Pen is just one of the shorthands for jail. And because of this, like the aunt shut down again. And I mean, a few things come up right away from this. You think back to Jesus Lord and Larry Hoover Jr. talking about his father going to jail and the fact that he and his family have felt like they've been imprisoned because of the association that people and the stigma that people have when you have a family member in jail, and the way that it weighs on you. It's not just Larry Hoover paying this like debt to society at this point. It's Larry Hoover's family, and is that necessarily fair? And you see the impact that this can have, which ties back to even Ye's story on Jesus Lord with the little brother that gets killed in the streets, and how that impacts the whole family, and the way in which this can really weigh on people. So just, yeah, uncle going back to the pen, auntie shut down again. And then it also recalls the very first song on the album, Jail, and Ye starting off the album in jail. And we didn't quite get the concept of what that meant for him and his family. But now, in hindsight of everything that we've learned over the course of the album, you have to wonder how that's going to impact him, how that's impacting his kids, how that's impacting his relationship when society keeps putting him in jail, when the industry keeps putting him in jail. And of course, there's some, like, he's not completely innocent and like, oh, I've been unfairly put into jail. Like,
right, yeah.
He's said and did things that caused this reaction. But at the same time, like, there is consequence on the flip side for what people, like how people are responding to him.
Yeah, and I'll just, again, wordplay, subtle wordplay, just the inclusion of again, both in Here Go Your Problems again, Auntie Shut Down again. Just that little inclusion implies recurring cyclical problems that you feel like you can't overcome, right? Yeah. So it's just, I just love that kind of, just those little details that make up so much of what you feel when you hear him sing this, because we all have those recurring problems. And then even with the uncle back in the pen, like he's back in the pen, also implying, you know, he could have easily stated uncle's in jail, like something very brief and immediate, but it's like, just even though there's a little amount of words, we're getting so much information. Back in the pen means he's, you know, getting in and out. He's in and out of prison. I love the way that just to reiterate what you said about how this song pays off on jail and Jesus Lord. That's something I had in my notes. Like, those are the three pillars of this album, right? Like, and they're spaced out pretty nicely. Mm-hmm. It's like the quote unquote Holy Trinity, if you want to make that kind of analogy, but like just the way that those three songs are interacting, it's genius. It's really cool the way that they to converse, they create an arc, and then the payoff here.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, actually. Like, thinking of it as cyclical, like because like I feel like you can get trapped when you're like looking at the scope of this album and what Kanye's going through, that it's like it's a specific thing that Kanye's going through to this specific moment of time. But really, like, this is a universal struggle. Like, this is something that happens to people multiple times. Like, Auntie Shut Down, I want to talk about like use of
Right.
The phrasing, like shutting down, like you feel like there's no turning back again.
Right.
Like this is a common feeling these people have gone through. And I think that's something all people could relate to. Like I feel like that happens to me a lot, where you just like get in these modes where like you don't even know how to like pick yourself up. Like you don't know when you're going to like find your drive again. Like it's just this common thing people go through. And I think that's a really, you're right to note, like Kanye's choice of words here, and us talking about the song being very universal and like speaking to people. It's not just about the specific thing Kanye's going through in this album. Like Kanye has gone through this multiple times. Like people go through this multiple times. It's just like all the words here right at the beginning are getting at all that and making it very personal.
And then you get a contextualizing line following that with, did she finally come to life? Which, whenever you get the song title in the song, it's a moment to kind of be like, oh, this is meaningful. And, sometimes you have to extrapolate from the rest of the song what's going on here. And to put that into context, like, what does it mean for the ant to finally come to life? Like, she just shut down again. So you're kind of getting this sense of, like, this happened. And now Ye is saying, at this point in time, like, has she come to life? Like, is she better? Has she improved? And we know as we go through the song that Ye himself is, like, shutting down at times. He's, like, felt these negative emotions, but the song ends with him floating on a silver lining and feeling free and feeling in some ways, like, not purified in this sense because it's just like a silver lining, but that this isn't the end. Like, you can move on, you can rebuild, you can go forward, you can feel like you have been brought back to life. So it's essentially just setting up this idea of, like, has Auntie had this, like, spiritual awakening? Has she, like, had God step into her life? Has she allowed God to step into her life? Has she found the silver linings of this ugly situation she's in? And maybe at the beginning of this song, like, no. But by the end of this song, we know that it's possible for her the same way that we're seeing, like, Ye reach that point.
Yeah, the other thing I would point out here, too, is it's a question right now.
Yeah.
Ever wish you had another life? And we're going to see an evolution from this. Everything in this first verse is going to come back again with subtle changes throughout. I think the biggest one is come to life right now as a question. So that's something to keep in mind as we keep going. And actually, I could do the harmonic thing right now, unless you guys wanted to talk more about the lyrics.
No, do some music. Yeah, do some harmonics.
Cool. So just some framework about, so you guys know this. I'll just explain it very quickly. Every song has a key signature, right? Most every Western song has a key signature. There's going to be, within that key signature, certain chords that do certain functions and feel a certain way. The biggest one I would say that everyone knows and feels intuitively, whether you know music or not, is what's called a tonic chord. Also, I'm going to call it the home chord. It's a chord that we hear within a key signature that you feel resolved, you feel calm, you feel at ease. It's what feels good, what feels resolved. So I point that out to say there's not a single instance in this first verse that we get the home chord. So the song's in E flat major, and I'll play right here. So just to establish up front, like, that's whenever we hear this E flat major chord, that's our home chord. It's where we're going to feel the most at ease. But the song starts in A flat major chord, moves to a B flat, moves to this really cool diminished chord, which I love. Like, so much tension in that chord. We get a resolution into C minor, which is, I think, worth breaking down. So in every key signature, there's what's called a major, which a tonic, which I said is a home chord, but there's also something called the relative minor. And the relative minor is like the dark side, the flip side of the coin. It's a secondary place that you can resolve to, and it'll still feel like a resolution, but it's a minor chord, so it's dark. And so right here, we're kind of set up to feel like we're in C minor, but there's this overhanging, and we get a kind of micro resolution to C minor from that B diminished. It's like a very solemn, sad feeling.
Yeah.
It's a resolution, but it doesn't feel great. And then it just repeats the cycle. But really what we're already yearning for, I know it's early and this is not totally rare that you're never going to get a home chord in the first, however long this first verse is. But I'm just pointing that out now. I'm going to save the rest, but that's something I want to plant now, is that there's a home chord of E flat major that we have not heard yet. And it's starting to create a tension and a build that I just want to point out now. And when we move into the first verse, I'll keep kind of building on this.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for that like E flat to come to life.
Exactly. Like seriously, exactly.
It's so funny to hear you describe that, because like that is the feeling you have listening to the song. Like whether you realize what it's doing technically on a musical level,
right.
That's why the end pays off so well.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wonder if the song "Remember" by Disturbed does the same.
Oh my gosh!
Of delaying the home chord. We'll talk about this later, but
definitely does.
I could always count on you for a Chipotle reference and a Disturbed reference. Every episode, I feel like so far.
The only two tricks I know. Bring them to bear every time. Okay, so
and maybe Green Day you'll throw in there at some point.
American idiots.
And I'll try to squeeze in a Showgirls reference by the end of this. I don't know how I'm going to do it for this song, but I could probably do it.
Yeah,
I have faith you'll be able to get on that poll, Travis.
I'll throw in the Eyes Wide Shut. That's my go-to.
Yeah.
We just look over at one point and you have the Eyes Wide Shut mask on. Just like, is that like, did you buy that off eBay? Where did you get that? Handmade? So did she finally come to life and then ever wish you had another life? So yeah, we go from that, like you at the beginning, which is very like talking to the listener, to the scene of the aunt and uncle, which puts the listener back in the position of the observer. And then we come back to the actual engagement with the listener. Like, ever wish you had another life? Like, have you? Do you? Which is very like inviting to the question, but also kind of like sermon-y in and of itself, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say it's a pretty common, I feel like, thing you see in even like pamphlets about religions. Like, you want to start over, we have a way, like that. It feels very much like that.
Yeah, you think about like 12-step programs and how much they're tied to like Christianity a lot of times, and faith and the idea of renewal and rebirth. And then, like, you ever wish you had another life? We've had songs that are saying, like, make me new again, make me new again, like, bring me out the graveyard. So all of this, as we were talking about with the title, is, like, coming to light. And also getting at the idea that, like, the idea of coming to life isn't something, or, like, having another life isn't something in terms of, like, you are reborn as, like, an entirely new person. But it's something like, do you want to feel like you can start again, like, right now? Even thinking back to new again, and like last night, does it count? This morning, does it count? You're new again. It's kind of that idea, like you listening right now that are upset about things in your life. You can start this other life where you're moving forward on things and feeling free. You don't have to stay burdened.
Right.
But first, before we get to that kind of catharsis, we have to go back into diving into some of this negative energy. So the verse 1 starts with, "Don't you wish the night would go numb?" Which,
again, phrasing, man. Like, who thinks of, like, it's such an odd but very, you feel it, right? Like, it's not the most common way you would say that, but good.
I mean, especially since he's talked about nighttime so many times on this album, and like the first part of this album is so engulfed in not just the night, but like hurricanes, like there's like this menacing energy to just like the environment. And so him saying, "Don't you wish the night would go numb?" like, it really makes you think back to all of those ugly moments he has early on the album, and how much you wish you could just will those things away, but you can't. So there has to be another path, because those things are always going to be, there's always going to be nighttime in your life.
And the idea of like all your problems are back, like you're pinned. And this idea of like, don't you wish the night would go numb so you can stop feeling all of this? Like
there's a sense of there's like a tragedy in the wish itself, right? Like you don't really want to go numb, but you're just so overwhelmed that it's again like why people turn to drugs, because you want it to go numb, you want it to go away at any means, which he follows this line saying, I've been feeling low for so long. So he's tying those things together. But just the word choice of numb, it's like, again, it's one of those small details that just makes it.
Yeah, which is the second time I can think where Ye is related to the idea of like going numb, which I told Travis, we don't have to bring it up, but now I want to bring it up. I thought about killing you again. At the start of the verse, he goes, I called my loved ones, I called up my cousins, I called up the Muslims, and I said I'm about to go dumb, get so bright it's no sun, get so loud I hear none, which, man, I love get so bright it's no sun. Like, I'm shining so brightly, like the sun doesn't even... unlike in Travis's room right now, like I block out the sun. Get so loud I hear none, scream so loud got no lungs, hurt so bad I go numb. So even there he was relating this idea of like starting to scream, flail, like hurts with going numb. And then time to bring in the drums, that parappa pum pum. So it's like when his pain reaches this point, he starts to make music. Which I love because this song itself is also so musical. But this idea of just like going numb, like you've reached this point of hurting and pain that you would rather just not feel anything at all. And I've been feeling low for so long, and we think about what he was talking about on Jesus Lord. We look back to early parts of the album, and you're just like, yeah. I ain't had a high in so long. I've been in the dark for so long. And not having a high in so long, you could think about like drugs and all of that and the artificiality of drugs in that way. Wasn't there even a song we were talking about that, Travis? Like the hollowness. It was 24, wasn't it? Or New Again? Like drugs were just like a fake hug.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah. So you could even look to Kanye's language in general about drugs and alcohol and how he's felt his need to distance himself from that because it creates this false reality and it's distancing him from God in a way. So yeah, it's definitely part of his language regarding drugs for sure.
Yeah, I wish I could I should know this, but there was definitely a song where we're talking about that specific thing. And now it's bothering me.
Sounds familiar, but I don't remember exactly where it was.
Yeah. But
are you talking about the song where he talks about drinking specifically?
Oh no, it's Jesus Lord. Oh God. Okay. No, on Jesus Lord he says, I know I made a promise that I'd never let the reaper in, but lately I've been losing all my deepest friends, and lately I've been swimming on the deepest end. It's just drugs. It ain't no hugs. It ain't no love there. You've been down so much you don't even know what's upstairs. So it's like you're so low that you don't even know what's like upstairs, up above you. And then he talks about the mom later on, and her mom's still doing drugs because that's the only time she feel loved. So you have like references on Jesus Lord to like seeking artificial highs through drugs and feeling this like hollowness in your life that you're trying to replace since you don't have love. So I had a high in so long. Feels like it's also calling back to Jesus Lord. I've been in the dark for so long. Ooh. And night is always darkest for the dawn, which, The Dark Knight? We get a epic quote from Harvey Dent, which I think... Kanye has referenced Dark Knight a couple times, I do believe, and Jay-Z has also referenced Dark Knight before. But there's also Psalm 30, which goes, I will exalt you, Lord, for you lifted me out of the depths and did not let my enemies gloat over me. Lord, my God, I called to you for help, and you healed me. You, Lord, brought me up from the realm of the dead. You spared me from going down to the pit. I'd even read that part before I brought this up. Man, okay. Sing the praises of the Lord, you his faithful people. Praise his holy name, for his anger lasts only a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. So that psalm starts to get into this idea of just like, you know, the night, like you might have these negative feelings in the nighttime, but in the morning, there's going to be light, there's going to be rejoicing, things will... the pain that you felt in the night won't last. And then, of course, praise God, you have Donda quoting Gwendolyn Brooks, and it starts with, that she wrote, speech to the young, speech to the progress toward, say to them, say to the downkeepers, the sun slappers, the self-soilers, the harmony hushers, even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night. And that's the exact song where Kanye talks about like praising our way out the grave and coming back to life. So like this idea of the dawn has been set up since Praise God. And now here in this last arc of the album, we're getting all of this light kind of starting to pour in. And here it's that like last like personal awakening that Ye needs, the light really starting to shine in. And it's not quite there yet on this song, but it's going to get there. So it's a nice callback that he like make sure to reference the night and dawn in this song, given like Praise God and the setup on Praise God.
I love the switch to first person here too. It's awesome because it's like, okay, set up the universal now, like all that applies to me. Right. So it's like this umbrella effect, right? Now he's going into his stuff, but it's already been established as his universal. So when he's saying I feeling low, it's like we feel low. Like he's saying that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And him becoming so personal. I mean, like, what's the most personal part of this album called Donda? Like, his mother's presence has just been looming this entire time, especially, you know, thinking back to Praise God, where she's the one quoting Gwendolyn Brooks. So in this moment, you know, this whole album, Kanye's been he's been thinking about his mom and how he wishes he could connect with her, but he can't. So he's trying to find this spiritual connection, becoming the man Donda raised him to be, like being somebody his mom can be proud of. How do you become that, and how do you know that? Here we actually see him finally heeding her advice, words we've literally heard her speak on this album, that he's realizing night is always darkest for the dawn, that there is a dawn, like there is something better on the horizon, and you have to keep pushing yourself there to make that realization, to come to that point on a song called Come to Life, on an album where he's trying to live up to his mother and try to make her proud and build a legacy. It's just so fitting.
Do you guys get the sense that Donda and God are like one and the same to Kanye?
Yeah. We had talked about this, I think, in the Donda episode, or maybe it was the Keep My Spirit Alive, one of them, or Jesus Lord. Everything's Jesus Lord. So if I'm wondering like what it is, it's Jesus Lord. We talked about how there's this dovetailing of Donda kind of becoming like the corridor, the pathway, the conduit between Ye and heaven, Ye and God, which really started on Only One. Like on Only One, he has Donda speaking down from heaven and essentially delivering like these messages from like God to him and talking with him. And it seems like ever since then, he started to like connect his mom with heaven, with God. So a lot of the time, whenever he's like making reference to God, you could start to read it as like making that connection with his mom, or when he's talking about the connection with his mom, he's talking about the connection with God.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think there's that recent quote where he said like, God speaks, or my mom speaks to me through North, right? Didn't he say that recently? So it does feel like, I mean, a lot of this album is about family as well, right? And like, if there is that, if it's like North, Donda, God, and these communication lines between all of them, one that's just like really cool and powerful, and like I get it as a father, I get that 100%. But also kind of like since we're on the subject, it's kind of cool that North makes an appearance on the song as like a really, really pivotal moment at the end. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Great points. So then we go into gotta make my mark before I'm gone. So just really starting to think now about mortality and the fact that, you know, there is only so much time that we have. Though I'm gone, you think about like death, you also think about like jail, like the uncle going back to the pen, like Ye doesn't know when he might get like canceled, thrown away, like how long he has this platform that he has. So there's kind of that implication in terms of just like life and death, but also in terms of celebrity, in terms of like having a microphone in your hand, so to speak. But then he goes very literal with mortality, with I don't want to die alone. So it's like I gotta make a mark on this world, but then also like I don't want to die alone. Like which you can see some of the tension in that. Like he's trying to do so much. He's buying property in Wyoming. He's building factories. He's traveling to these meetings. But then at the same time, it's like exactly those things that are taking him away from the home and taking him away from his family. It's one of the things that Kim cited on Keeping Up with the Kardashians in terms of why she was looking for the divorce, was that like she can't go everywhere with him that he wants to go all the time. And she feels horrible about that, but also at the same time, like she wants to be in Calabasas. The kids are there. They have their routine. So how do you deal with that tension of like trying to do all these things that you know you can do while at the same time maintaining your like marriage, your like relationship with your kids? There's a lot of tension between those two.
Yeah. And while you definitely can make the connection here of like, I don't want to die alone, like connecting that to Kim, especially since they're getting a divorce. And especially since a lot of the lines coming up, like mad when she's gone, mad when she's home, sad when she's gone, like that seems to apply to Kim. I mean, speaking more generally, again, the universal nature of the song, like I don't want to die alone. Kanye being on earth without his mother, losing that stability he had in his life that he had been trying to build for so long. It goes beyond just like one person. You just don't want to feel alone. Like you want to make sure you have like a stable structure around you. You want to make sure you have a spiritual connection with your mom that keeps you warm and it makes you feel like somebody's there. So he's expressing a lot with that line.
Yeah, it's a line that it's hard for me to even talk about, to be honest. Like every time I hear that line, it's like, fuck. Like I never once pinned it to Kim. And I understand the next lines, and I get that there's a connection there, but to me that the way that it repeats it also, like it's like fucking it's heart-wrenching. And it's like, and also what makes it really impactful is that right before he says that line, we get that B diminished chord, that really tense, and then it gets into the minor chord resolution. And so when he says, I don't want to die alone, it hits that C minor, that relative minor. So it's like you're getting a resolution, but again, it's like the sad one. And that part fucking kills me every time I hear it.
Yeah. Gosh, it's just like, I mean, expanding on like the whole, like, it's not just Kim, like it's this whole album, and you just think about Kanye in general, just the way he talks, and like the Drink Champs interview, like, the guy's running for president. Like he's on a much larger mission, and he means to connect with people on a broader scale through the word of God. Like it's not just this personal relationship. It's not just about one person. If it's this massive, deep, spiritual, communal connection he's trying to find. It's kind of, just going like to the nth level of something, like he always does. And he has to keep this part of his life. He can't lose this part of Kanye that's always made him Kanye. He's somebody who wants to reach out to the world. He renamed himself Ye, which means everybody. Like it's his very being to be able to stay connected with the world and to not feel alone. Like there's just so much is being conveyed there. It's crazy.
I want to note real fast that Cole, when you were just playing the keyboard, you weren't looking. So skill. And then you also, like, of note, we talked about the communal aspect in the production, right? Not the piano itself, but the church sample in the background.
Yeah.
So as he's saying, I don't want to die alone, you're literally hearing the voices of like a congregation behind him and having kind of that support in place or that presence in place, which kind of gets at the implication of like when you have God, you're not alone, all of that.
But it also, but to me, it conveys like, why would somebody say, I don't want to die alone? Either one, they feel like they're alone in this moment, or it's a big fear that they have going forward. So it speaks to this idea of like feeling alone amongst people. You can feel alone amongst a church group, and like that's not fulfilling you enough or at that moment or whatever it is. Like, again, it's just like that admission is so huge to me, I think, especially coming from someone like Kanye, who we like, this larger than life character. And this is the thing that always brings me back to Kanye. Like, despite all the shenanigans, sometimes it's like in his music, like this is what he's giving you, this is what he's admitting, and it's like the humanity of that line. Again, I do think the tension between got to make my mark before I'm gone, and then following that with I don't want to die alone is so critical. Like, I even like as a parent, like I understand the conflict between personal goals and balancing personal goals with family. You extrapolate that exponentially with someone like Kanye, who has the skills, the facility, has worked his entire life to put himself in this position to have this huge reach. But I mean, speaking from experience, I know how hard it is when you are home, when you are just having a 9-to-5 more type of job, when you're still locally, like how hard it is to maintain and balance work life, family, marriage. Like, it's fucking tough. And the complication of his lifestyle, his desires, his ambitions, I just feel like that's so much of this album is that tension and you know, a lot of his choices kind of leading to the dissolution of his marriage, that threatening his relationship with his family. Like this part of the song, this part of the album, to me is just like, it's the night before the dawn, right? It's like, it's the lowest moment. It's exactly the lowest moment.
Yep. I just can't stop being amused by
the light. There's nothing to do about it. I can't do anything about it.
The light pouring into Travis. It's just like intensifying so much. Okay.
I meant to put some blind. We actually just ordered blinds, which, by the way, a homeowner, like, for all future phone rows out there, buying blinds is a bitch. They're expensive, and like, you got to find the right size, you got to find the right color. They take forever to ship. We just got a sweet deal on some blinds. I wish I could plug the website here, but I forget what it is. And I just have not had it. The sun, it's, you know, the changing seasons. The sun is now coming in at a different angle. I didn't know this was going to happen before now. It was not a big issue, but
yeah,
bear with me.
Amazing. All right, so I get mad when she gone. Like, I don't want to die alone, and then I get mad when she gone. So you're going from like the idea of being alone to him like having another negative emotion, and the fact that like when she gone, of course we jump right to Kim, right? But as we were talking like up top and in previous episodes, like Ye albums almost always extrapolates the woman that he's talking about on the like specific song or album to his relationship with the public, with the industry, with society, like everything. Like, you can just extrapolate up. So you think about this in terms of just the attention that Ye gets and the dynamic that he has with society and the industry. Like, he's mad when they're not paying attention to him, but then he's mad when like he's part of the industry. Like, right. You can just imagine with the Grammys, like the Grammy nominations came out today, and Donda is getting nominated for Album of the Year, and he's having songs nominated for Best Rap Song, and somebody just came up to do something at her house, so I got to text my wife about this. What the fence guy in the backyard? He just arrived, and we're recording. This was not scheduled.
People are really getting a glimpse behind the curtain of this episode.
I know, right?
What it's like to be in
all
our
three
lives.
of us had a.
I know.
These are long episodes to give ourselves a little bit of slack. It's not like a little half-hour hit.
Absolutely.
This is a big portion of the day.
Right. So you can extrapolate with the Grammys, like they just nominate them, and it's on the one hand you're excited to like be part of that and be nominated and be part of that like industry and everything. But then at the same time, like if he doesn't win, like it's just frustrating and annoying. Like, are you gonna piss on another Grammy? Like, what are you gonna, like? There's
or
that
even
back and forth,
or even the categorization of specifically "Jail" was categorized as a rap song, which I know like hip hop artists that get people that transcend hip hop, like Kanye, like even Tyler on Igor, getting pigeonholed into these categories because of their skin color, because of their history, like. That's his point of frustration with the Grammys, with just the industry, the public. So I do think I didn't think about that interpretation before. Like I always just thought Kim, or just a woman and loneliness and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that works. I do want to acknowledge though, it's again one of those like it's simple. Like right, these phrases are simple. I get mad when she gone. It's like very, very, very simple. Yeah. But the phrasing, like. The repetition is what makes this passage, right? I get mad when she gone, mad when she home, sad when she gone, mad when she home, sad when she gone. It's like, it's like you like in that passage, you understand exactly the problem. Like exactly, it explains everything about the relationship. It's perfect. I love like that. This whole section of the song is like incredible, like virtuosic, incredible.
Yeah, it's such a, and it's what Ye does so well in terms of lyricism, just getting things down to their core emotions and making it like compelling but not overwrought.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, but also like starting from where we're at with like, don't you wish to go numb? And now we're in this scene of him being mad when she home, sad when she gone. It's just like when we were talking about up top, you get the concept and then you get the example.
Like him, this is him pinned, right? Like this is him not knowing. Yeah. Because like if you're mad when she's gone and mad when she's home, what else is there to do? Like there's no other options aside from those two things, right? Like he's pinned. Like this is him exemplifying that first chorus.
Yep.
Totally. Yeah.
And then that back and forth nature of things, and notice that it doesn't end with mad, right? It ends with him just sad that she's gone. So you have the back and forth, and sadness kind of wins out. And I mean, it makes you think back to Hurricane. It makes you think back to Believe What I Say, Lord I Need You, and the times in which Ye was talking about dynamics of the relationship. And he's like blaming himself, but he's also not glorifying things. It's just another insight into like where things were at for them, but also where things are just at with him in the public at this point. So we go from that to Floating on a Silver Lining. Yeah, you know where to find me, riding on a silver lining. So this is the first like upswing that we get. Like it's been darkness, 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 and now it's just like, okay, she's gone. And all I can do is float on a silver lining. And yeah, you know where to find me, riding on a silver lining. Like, this is the space that I have to exist in. Is it in the, like, I'm not in the light yet. I'm still, like, in the dark, but I've found the silver lining that's going to be this thread that I can, like, kind of grab hold of and pull myself towards the light.
Can you guys guess what happens here?
Oh, we get the resolve. We get the resolve, the home chord.
Yeah, when Chris was like, "We get our first upswing here," I was like,
"It's not the resolution. We get it. We do get an E flat major, so we do get the chord. Technically, it's not set up in a way that is a moment of pause and resolution. It's more like you hear it in passing. You can play it here. So you get the C minor." So it switches like pretty fast back to the A flat. The E flat was this. Was that, and then it goes to A flat. So it's like you hear it, but you hear it exactly when he says floating on a silver lining. Like after he says floating on a silver lining, you get the E flat for a moment. I can
hear it.
So it's like, it'll be more clear when you hear it in the actual song, because I'm not about to sing. I wish I could. I really wish I could, but I like literally can't sing. So
we've made like a fans have made compilation cuts of like us singing random moments from this album.
Yeah, I'm gonna avoid that.
Where it's just like
just don't do it.
Jesus, Lord. That's the only thing I can do.
So it's just, I would say it's like a micro resolution. I would say that the overall tension is still building. We've that's the first glimpse of the E flat major. We're now almost at the end of verse 1. We're probably 2 minutes into the song or something. So 2 minutes of tension is a lot. Like that is a lot. So just we get the glimmer, we get the embers of a home chord right when he says silver lining. So it's just like, okay, perfect. And it's like a part of this larger build that I'm going to keep teasing out, but that's the first like glimmer.
Nice. Okay.
That makes sense. Like just thinking at the beginning of the song where he says Auntie shut down again, and like the struggle to come back to life. Like it's a long, tenuous struggle. It's not something that happens easily. It takes a lot of work. So it's not surprising that it's like teased and like built out musically.
Right. That's something that I'll just note, like generally speaking about this album. I think like in my own head, I don't know if this is like just me, but in my own head, it was always like, okay, the Christian narrative was like, you're struggling, you find God, and like everything's great after that, right? Like, I don't know if that was just my simple like perception of what the idea was, but what I love about Kanye's iteration, I think Femi really actually taught me a lot about this. It's not like that's not it. Like that's such a simplified, reduced version of resolve and spirituality and finding God, as I understand it, as someone that's not, that.
Yeah.
There's still struggle. It's like you find God, but it's not like all your problems are absolved. And so I've always loved, like even Donda is a great example of this, where it's like, or like even Jesus to King to Donda, it's like he found God and Jesus the King. It's not like his life was just like suddenly perfect and great and like he was happy all the time. Like there's struggles, there's cyclical struggles as we're seeing. God gives you like, something to hold on to. It gives you guiding forces. It does all that stuff, but it's not like this snap of the finger thing. Just something interesting, something I appreciate about his version of like gospel music is like, it feels very real.
Yeah, it's not idealized in the way of just like built on the false promise that like everything's good now. You even look at like Jesus' gospel, and it's like, no, it's using the gospel for protection, like because there's still going to be like
right
like the demons, the devils. You're still going to have like your bad habits. I apologize for everything I'm going to do again. Like you have these things that'll keep coming up, your challenges, but do you keep growing?
Right.
Like, do you keep like making it through?
Yeah.
Also, you follow up the writing on a silver lining with, "And my God won't deny me. Tell the devil, get behind me," which
hell yeah,
yeah,
great line.
Like he knows that he's going to be like, essentially like he has faith that like God won't like deny him his prayers, won't deny him salvation, redemption, help. And "Tell the devil, get behind me" is something that we just talked about on Pure Souls. In the bridge, after we get like Roddy Ricch, essentially like the front half that's just a Roddy Ricch song, we get the Kanye verse that's so like celebratory and declarative of the fact that like he is from Chicago and that he transcends being like one group or another group, right? He hasn't picked Moes or folks. He just like likes both. He identifies with the 6 points of the folks and the like five laws of the like Moes. So he's like very connected to the people and saying like the South Side and we outside, like I could be in the South Side of Chicago and be completely safe and be completely fine because I connect with everybody here. I'm a pure soul in that way. But in the bridge, he's like, it ain't how it used to be. This is the new me, so get used to me. And we talked about how much of a payoff that was on New Again and 24 and all of these songs where Ye was looking to be redeemed and be saved. And in the midst of this, you have looking in the mirror, it's the truth of me. Looking at my kids, it's the proof of me. Devil, get behind me. I'm loose, I'm free. So there he was literally telling the devil to get behind him because he's just like feeling so good. and feeling so like whole and renewed. And we talked about how this actually comes from Matthew. And when Jesus starts to explain that, you know, some things are going to go wrong, he's like telling the disciples, he's like, you know, many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that they're going to kill me, you know? And Peter's like, what? No, like, this will never happen. Like,
that's a great impression of Peter, by the way. I love it.
No. And Jesus looks at Peter. So it's like Peter's being like a bro, right? Not a boy. He's being a bro in terms of like just saying like,
bro energy.
That's never going to happen to you. You're like too great for that. And Jesus just looks at him and goes, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Like, so it's essentially just like flicking Peter in the forehead and being like, stop being so small-minded. Like, be an adult. Like, grow up. Like,
poor Peter.
Bad things will happen. Like, get behind me, Satan. So that's been like a famous phrase, I guess, ever since the Bible was written, in terms of like, you know, devil get behind me. So he says it in Pure Souls as like, devil get behind me. You think about Heaven and Hell, where they talk about like devils pray now. Like, it's really putting the devil in his place. And now here it's again like, and my God won't deny me, tell the devil get behind me. Like, I'm choosing God. And we talked before how Ye in interviews was talking about how he used to make music for the devil. He used to live his life like kind of working for the devil, and now he works for God. So it's kind of coming back to that change, right? Not just in his day-to-day life, but in how he's behaving as a celebrity and how he's behaving as an entrepreneur. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that does, that thinking about that and stemming from what Cole was saying about like the Christian narrative and how like things aren't just always better for you when you find God. Like, there are all these little micro struggles you go through. It does make me think of Kanye's discography and how many of his albums end on a like ambiguous or like confused note, or not necessarily in a positive light, you know, like Lost in the World. I mean, the name of that song alone. St. Pablo has a lot of dark energy, like, will you find God in your nightlife? Both Ye and Kids See Ghosts like end in these like confused states, like not sure like where God, like ready to move forward, like wanting to find God. Jesus Is King and Donda are two albums where he is fully in tune with God, and in my mind like end positively.
Yeah.
While there are a lot of micro struggles within, which is just natural for anybody, even if you found God, because God is in your life, you can get to this better spot. We can end in this light, and the devil has kind of won out on so many of Kanye's albums, if not won out, at least like continued to loom and threaten. And but here, like on Come to Light, like you feel like you really believe Kanye, like he's overcoming the devil and he's finding God. It's so fitting for a song Come to Life. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing I wanted to bring up, just not to go back too far, I'm bringing this up because I know you guys are
all we do in the show.
It's cool. You guys will appreciate it as literary people. But the phrase silver lining, I don't know if you guys did any research on it. It comes from a 1634 poem by John Milton. The line is this: was I deceived, or did a sable cloud turn forth her silver lining on the night? So kind of cool connection there. It was talking about, you guys laid out how night is this big theme. Night's always darkest for the dawn. The very first uplift of the song Silver Lining has roots in the night, which is kind of cool.
1634 poem Comus, which John Milton famously is the poet who wrote Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
One of the like most literary tellings of the Genesis, like the book of Genesis, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. Cool. Okay, that's neat. And then we get kind of this upward progression, right? So it's not only God won't deny me, devil get behind me, and all the stars aligned. So now we're like zooming up from where we were at from like the very grounded, like I'm mad when she's like home, mad when she's gone, like auntie and uncle, to like stars aligning. Like the scope has really like broadened. Lift me up every time, you know exactly where to find me. So now instead of feeling so low and talking about I had a high in so long, Ye's literally talking about like the stars and being lifted up, and you know exactly where to find me. And in this sense, it's almost like up there, right? like floating on the silver lining. He is now elevated. That high he was looking for has arrived through God's grace.
No longer pinned down.
Yeah, that reminds me of Pure Souls, like when he's talking to Drake, says we have to square it up then, like actually we're gonna send it up. Like it's really translating this idea of like negative language, and like I'm now just on this spiritual path, like I'm just heading up. It reminds me of Only One too, like rise until the skies know your name. Like that is just like now the trajectory he's on.
Yep. What did that also, I'm gonna blank on what it was that I just, Liftoff. You know, is it a Liftoff reference? Which, if it is, the song automatically... Is
this going to make you like Liftoff?
No, it makes this song worse if it is a Liftoff reference, you know? Just because...
What if I came in and was like, actually, musically, there's an interpolation of Liftoff right here.
I would lose my mind. I would probably... like go from memeing to just being like, no. But yeah, you know, take it to the moon, take it to the stars. Anyway, all right, so
Liftoff, every single time Liftoff will bring this show to a grinding halt. Like we don't even know how to move forward after it.
It's just that tragic of a song, you know. You got to take a moment of silence. So then we get the interlude, which is the hallelujah, like thank you Jesus, which is coming from the video, and you literally hear the woman from the video speaking in tongues, kind of like in the background of everything. She's just kind of like muttering like da 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 da. You're like, cool. But like showing the idea of, you know, in this part where like Ye is talking about like the stars are aligned, he's lifting up, having this sample, for lack of a better word, of a woman speaking in tongues because she's so overwhelmed by the Spirit. And Cole, as you were saying earlier, that practice is one where you're just feeling like so full of faith that the faith's speaking through you in this language of the heavens, you know, the language of the angels. So it's just like quite a powerful moment and quite a powerful tipping point for this song, which, like the album, had been kind of a wash in darkness leading up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about dark and light, he's saying, if, you know, light being all the stars aligned, lift me up, like what's lifting him up? Light, like the light has entered him. And light has numerous associations with God in the Bible. So it makes perfect sense. It's a great payoff. That I love those background things. Like they're so powerful to me. Yeah, I'm not Christian at all, and it's like you can feel it, you know.
Totally.
It adds It adds like a great buoyancy to this song.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go from like the hallelujah, hallelujah, like just kind of shouting out, and calls back to the intro, right? My soul cries out hallelujah, and I thank God for saving me. Like hallelujah is like that soul cry, that like thank you.
Yeah.
And then the pre-chorus, did those ideas ever really come to life? So before Ye was asking, like, did Auntie finally come to life? And now it's, did the ideas ever really come to life? Like, have the things I've been like hoping, dreaming, thinking, like for myself, my future me, like the rest of the world, you know, where are those at? And then says, make it all come to life. Like asking God, like, can you bring these things to fruition? Can you bring these things into existence? And you're praying for a change in your life, which you think back to the ants and how down she is and looking to find that silver lining, the fact that Ye has found his silver lining. Well, maybe it's going to come tonight. And that maybe it's going to come tonight comes back to that I've been in the dark for so long, night is always darkest for the dawn. Just kind of like, yeah, you know, maybe tonight you're going to have this change that brings the silver lining, that brings the dawn and the daylights, and when you look again, everything is like brought to life.
Yeah, so here oh, go ahead. I was going to do a harmonic thing, but cool.
No, go for it. Yeah.
So this is another micro progression. So in my mind, did those ideas ever really come to life, and then importantly make it all come to life? Switches. It's the first time we get not a question when it comes to come to life. Like before, it's did you wish you ever want another life? Did she come to life? Now we're getting command of make it all come to life, like an affirmation. And so we get another a little stronger micro resolution to the E flat, specifically when he says, did those ideas ever really come to life? When he says come to life, we get the E flat. And not to jump ahead too much, but the end of this couplet, when he says, well, maybe he says, praying for a change in your life, well, maybe it's going to come tonight. Tonight, when he says tonight, is the first real resolution of the song. It's not going to be the strongest one, but it's the one where he sings an E flat, and we get the first kind of E flat where it actually stays around for a while. So again, we're getting these micro progressions towards this larger resolution. We get the question come to life turns to an affirmation, and you can the silver lining kicked off this upward swing in the song. All that's being matched with these incremental resolutions building towards a larger resolution.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that before I talk, because I feel like that crystallizes kind of what I was thinking, which is like, I'm just thinking back to when we were talking about like Kanye talking about the her, what the her represents. And yeah, it could definitely represent like the music industry, but I feel like whenever Kanye talks about this metaphorical woman in his music, it isn't necessarily just one thing. It's getting back to the whole like pigeonholing we talked about, like this idea that he has to be a certain way, whether it's in music or fashion or just the way he even is. These rules we write for people and how you're allowed to be. This is Kanye's greatest superpower, and the thing I find most inspiring about him is he just says no. Like, you can't tell me how to be. You can't box me into anything. I will make my ideas come to life. Like, I cannot be stopped. I'm on this mission. And now that these aligned with God, and like the mission feels like bigger and more spiritual and more communal, him saying like, did those ideas ever come to life? Like, that's really what it's about. Like, it's about Kanye's ideas for who he should be and where the world should go and how he can lead the world towards that. It's just so much bigger. Like, when you feel shut down, you lose that part of yourself. Like, Kanye has no desire to make that part of his life in these low moments where he's lost his mom, where he's losing his wife, where he feels like he's losing his family, where it feels like society's turned on him. Like, coming to life in moments like that and making your ideas come to life, like, that's the hardest part. That's the struggle. And that's why this pre-chorus is like such a huge payoff, and probably why we're hearing that resolving chord. Like, it is that moment where like he's finally bursting through all of the negativity and saying like, no, like, stars are aligned. Like, I'm ready to come to life tonight. It's happening right now.
What's lovely about that is that, you know, we talked about early on that idea of like, you know, got all your problem, here go all your problems again, anti-shut down again, like the cyclical nature of everything, right? And now here we go from the silver lining and like, maybe it's going to come tonight, back to sadness setting in again. So it's like, even as you're taking those steps forward, which, you know, you could also read that as him just kind of like backtracking and staying in the same like vein of thought, but you have this like build towards like the silver lining, and now you're coming back to this like sadness, back to the aunt and uncle, like the situation is returning to its beginning point. So it's almost setting up like a breaking of the cycle, but in order to get at the breaking of the cycle, you need to at least bring the cycle around a second time to establish it firmly.
Yeah, you guys can guess now, I think, what happens tonally when the sadness sets in again. Do we get the E flat? No, we did not. Not yet, at least.
Not yet. Yeah. So it's like you almost have like the mini resolutions building up, but then it goes away, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Which is just the same thing that happens in Remember by Disturbed. So amazing that Ye would like find inspiration from such a
crazy
from such a source. All right, so the chorus, sadness setting in again, 3, 2, 1, you're pinned. So we're back at the beginning, right? Uncle right back in the pen. Tell me how Auntie been. And instead of repeating the same thing, like, did she finally come to life? Ever wish you have another life? We like blow up, which is the same thing that happens in the second time we get to the chorus and remember. But took your thoughts and penciled them in, which is like, okay. On the one hand, that feels considerate, right? Like, but you're like writing down what somebody said. You're paying attention in some way. But pencil is something that can be erased. Pencil is something that kind of fades over time. Like pen is the permanent, more permanent, not entirely permanent, but in the competition
those
between
erasable
pencil and pen.
pens.
Yeah, right. Maybe he's using.
I remember in grade school, everyone had erasable pens.
They've come a long way. My daughter has them now, and they actually erase like just as good as pencils, if not better. But before it was like it was better. Horrible.
Yeah, and in our time, back in the day. You just get like
those were rough days.
The eraser would like tear a lot. It would just leave like a lot of debris that you'd have to write away or like wipe away, but you write over it. But took your thoughts and penciled them in. Should have wrote them down in pen, which is like, I think that's a line to me that is one of the most poetic that Ye has ever delivered.
Yeah, it's fucking brilliant.
The visual of it, like you can just imagine like the difference between pencil and pen, the idea of the like impermanent versus the permanent, and talking about like his relationship with Kim and where things went wrong, like summarizing it with just like, you know, I was listening to you, but I essentially wasn't taking you seriously. And maybe if I would have taken our relationship more seriously, you more seriously, maybe if I would have like not been so caught up in my own stuff, like things would have been better. Which you could read it that way. You could also just read it as like taking himself more seriously, because there is no, like, the you is generalized, right? And we haven't gotten him saying like, Kim, I took your thoughts and penciled them in. Like, so because Ye does this thing, we've talked about this on other albums, other songs, the subject isn't clarified, it is a little more ambiguous. You can apply it to multiple like entities. So you can think about this as him talking to Kim. You could think about this as like him talking to the public, talking to himself, talking to others in the industry. The same way that he's maybe trying to take responsibility for where things went wrong. And like his marriage, you can see him trying to take responsibility for the way things went wrong in other aspects of his life. Scaled up or down, right? To the very personal, to the very like macro.
Yeah, to me, it ties back to Make It All Come to Life. So Make It All Come to Life is like the affirmation. It still requires action, right? It's like things hadn't come to life yet, but there's this like responsibility implied in that statement of like, come to life. Like you got to make it come to life. And then, so we get the progression. Maybe it's going to come tonight. Problem's still there. And then to me, the switch from pencil to pen is like everything. It's like exactly faith. Like the metaphor to me is like faith. And I didn't think about the Kim thing, but like I think that applies too, because faith and relationship and commitment to a relationship. Yeah. Like I feel like he's saying on one level, a big level, is that like you can't be halfway committed, let's say, to God, to spirituality, to faith. You need to believe wholeheartedly to God. You need to write in pen. Your actions need to affirm that every step of the way, you know, like, and again, I think the relationship factor there is brilliant too. It's just like, it's this idea of like just not being fully committed and how that can cause problems. And the transformation that juxtaposition from pencil to pen, I feel like is just a really important shift. And I'll let you guys guess what happens after he says that.
It makes me think too, like Kanye with his art background, right? Like he had a scholarship to the American Academy of Art in Chicago. He was winning awards for being like a visual artist, like drawing, some painting, but a lot of like sketching, drawing. For any artists, you usually do the initial sketch in pencil, and then you move on to pen when you're ready to get serious with the work.
Right.
And then like you kind of make the art come to life as you add in detail and like develop it in pen and with the colors and everything else. So I wonder if there's like a little bit of that like artist way of doing things, like, and getting back to what you were saying, Cole, about like faith. If you're feeling fully confident, like to just start with pen is something that in the art world it's kind of like, oh
yeah,
you're not like you're not even writing it down in pencil. You're so sure of like the lines that you're making and the vision that you have, you're just like write in pen. So there's some like multiple like layers and aspects to that.
And also the wordplay here too. Like he was using pen before as jail. Now he's using pen as the way to free yourself, not to burn the actual payoff at the very end, but like the pen is the way you're going to get out of the pen, you know?
Yep. Make things come to life.
Yeah.
And
man, that idea of making it like, God, I hadn't even really, I mean, I had thought of it, but it's just all crystallizing now. I also think about, because I think so many people will try to tie this on specifically to Kim and the situation he had gone through with Kim. I think it's important to remember that when this song premiered at the third listening party in Chicago, and Kim came out, she was dressed as Beatrice from Dante's Inferno. And thinking about what Beatrice represents in that story, I mean, we could go into a whole larger discussion, I guess, about the story of that, and maybe Chris wants to. Maybe he's chomping at the bit here to do it. But I was just doing light research on Beatrice, and I liked what Wikipedia had written about her, that what she represents is divine revelation, theology, faith, contemplation, and grace. And Kim coming out as that kind of figure, like, I don't think it's necessarily that Kim has to be the Beatrice of Kanye's life, but that she represents what Kanye found with her and what he can now keep in his life moving forward. He doesn't need to attach it to one person to make his ideas come to life. Like he has to channel that power from within through God, through the people in his life, maybe through another woman. I don't know, whatever it is, but like the idea that he's so sure that he can find it now, that's the power of this, especially coming out of the divorce, knowing that they aren't together anymore. Like, I know he keeps talking about in interviews how he wants to keep the marriage together, and yeah, of course he does, but like I don't get that attitude here in this song, and necessarily I don't get that from him in his like larger language. I think he understands that like moving forward he has to channel that energy, and I feel like that's just a big part of everything we're talking about here.
That's the Beatrice thing that you're talking about. It was at the very end of the listening party. Kim came out wearing that like white gown and white outfit, and there had been talks of the as I'm like hiding my car keys, or the car keys from my wife. There was talk of maybe the listening parties being inspired in some way by the Divine Comedy by Dante, with the first one being like hell, where Kanye's in all red, it's very empty, and then the second one being purgatory, with the room kind of in isolation, and then the third one being more of like rebirth, heaven, like you're getting this kind of what felt like a funeral procession, you're getting the cross on the house that Kanye grew up in, you're having him be set on fire, which feels like redemption and like the purifying fire, right? Not just the damning fire of hell, but the purifying fire of heaven. And to go from that fire to Kim coming out in whites at the end of the Divine Comedy, as Dante goes from heaven, or goes from hell to purgatory to paradise. It's in paradise that he finally reconnects with Beatrice, and she kind of informs him about heaven. And Beatrice wasn't even the love of his life. Beatrice was just his muse. like Dante was married to somebody else. He only met Beatrice like one time and maybe only saw her 2 times, but it kind of picked her as just like a focal point for this, as like a muse, a figure to take inspiration in this like journey. So there were theories of that, and even in the recent Heaven and Hell video, which I don't know if you two watched the video that appeared at the end of the latest Sunday service, but Ye has, it goes from this like city where everybody's wearing like all black that looks like the outfits Ye was wearing during like some of the listening parties and walking around, to this moment happening where like a parent covers a child's eyes. It seems like something has happened, like a bomb's dropped, something like that, and all of a sudden you're in the spirit world and you're seeing this hurricane of spirits and whirling spirits. 2 of the like images that we get, or 2 of the scenes, seem directly lifted from Gustave Dore's prints depicting elements of the Divine Comedy. So it seems like even if Ye wasn't reading the Divine Comedy to take inspiration for a lot of what's going on in Donda, he was looking at these prints that was inspired by it. Like, so from the listening parties to now this Heaven and Hell music video, it feels like there's a little bit more of a connectivity going on between like what's happening in Donda and the Divine Comedy.
Makes sense.
Not surprising.
With Kanye too, like I know there's a claim to like think it's a reach always, but he's into so much shit. It's so clear that he's like into so many things. He's been in art museums all over the world in the past couple months. He's posting, deep cuts of art references on his Instagram. It's like anything's in play with Kanye in terms of where he's going to gather inspiration. So it's like there's no reference too vague where I'm like, that could be a possibility for sure, especially, given his track record.
Yeah. Whew. All right. So
this is, I'll just jump in if are we going to move on? Because this is like the moment. Yeah. Well, okay, it's not actually the moment, but it's like, it is the moment. Like this is what splits the song in half, right? Like this is where the transition into the piano comes, right?
Okay.
And this is where we get like, before we got a very tiny micro resolution, then we got a larger one when he says night. And then now we're getting the biggest one yet, which is the song cuts, like the organ goes and it's replaced by a piano. The piano plays E flat, the home chord, over and over and over and over and over again. So we get, and maybe they'll come to life. It's the first declarative statement of coming to life.
Yep.
There's still a maybe, which I think is important to note. So we're still getting a progression. We're still not quite coming to life. It's a maybe still, which I think is important. But this is where the transformation happens. This is where we get our first real big, we feel it in our gut resolution. That's all I'll say. I think I should just keep it there for now because after this initial E flat, when it starts getting into singing again, and specifically when the big guitar riff comes into the fold, it's going to go back to what we heard throughout the first half of the song, where the E flat goes away, and there's tension throughout the whole thing. It's a little bit different because the high piano parts are going to be playing E flat the entire time. I'll break that down when it becomes appropriate, but the high piano parts are going to be playing E flat. Below it, there's bass notes, and specifically the guitar, those big guitar distorted hits that are not playing E flat, that are creating tension throughout this entire part. So we should just acknowledge, and when we hear the clip, like this is a big breath. We've been waiting, 3 minutes to get to this spot, which is like crazy for a real solid resolution. But as soon as he kind of starts singing again, and he says sadness setting in again, that's exactly when the E flat goes away.
Ooh. Oh. Wow. So it's just, you keep having that like tease and that like connection to the moments in the lyrics. Nice. It's so cool. It's like micro, everything's getting a little larger, and it's aligning perfectly every time with the lyrics, with this transformation of coming to life as a question, then a maybe, or like the affirmation, and then the maybe, still not coming to life yet,
but getting there. And it's all lining up perfectly with these larger and larger resolutions.
Well done. Also, then we do get this repetition coming through, and it's almost identical except for the pencil and pen, right? So instead of took your thoughts and penciled them in, he just says thoughts you had penciled them in, which at this point, you can read that as like you had penciled in your own thoughts. You could still apply it to like you had penciled in someone else's thoughts, but it kind of gets into that like just a little bit of rearrangement to put some emphasis on specifically this edition, which is kind of the biggest addition to the aunt, uncle, like 3, 2, 1, you're pinned kind of thing. And then you get that build, right? Probably should have wrote them in pen, and maybe they'll come to life. They could finally come to life.
Exactly.
Which,
huge change there, yeah.
Yep. What we had it as the question before, and ever wish you had another life, going to make it all come to life, now going to maybe come to life, and then finally come to life. Like, you see what you have to do. You see the action. Like, have faith, be determined, like, write things in pen, like, take things seriously, right? And have that conviction, and what you desire could finally come to life. Like, you could be satisfied. It's kind of setting it up as like the idea of like coming to life is going to essentially be like paradise in some way. We know that it won't always be good.
Yeah.
Like, there's still going to be downturns, but in terms of like where you're currently at and the things that you desire, this is the way to like get them.
Right. And I think for artists too, it's like so much of Kanye does it. Like, I think every album, but a lot of artists do. They write themselves. They write their life. They write their way towards resolution, I guess. Right. Like, sometimes you write in art. You create the thing that you're aiming for, even though you're not quite there. Which I feel like he's created. Like, Come to Light specifically is the ideal resolution. It reflects the struggle and the journey and an arrival moment. And I feel like whether he came to that or not in real life, I don't know. It seems like he probably did, or some version of this. But I feel like art, and I find this actually a lot with Dissect albums. It's like you write your own idealized version, and then you strive to get there, right? It's like helping you clarify your desires and what you want. Even if you're not an artist, that's a common kind of practice that if you go to counseling or anything, like, they'll tell you to be writing down your feelings, and not only your feelings, but like where you want to go. And so I feel like a lot of that progression that we're seeing, not only on the album itself, but even in the song, is like he's kind of writing himself into his reality, what he wants it to be, kind of materializing it or manifesting it.
Yeah, and a big part of that for Kanye too, somebody who's so ambitious and wants to be a leader, is like you almost picture him in these moments thinking back throughout the album and all the people he's just either described struggling or people we've seen struggling, thinking songs like Jonah, just like the larger problems plaguing society. I mean, he's talking about auntie and uncle here, and like these people he sees struggling, and like that hurts him and makes him think about himself and his own personal struggles. Like, making these ideas come to life means, like, unless society's moving forward, unless he's leading people in general towards something greater through his own actions, through the word of God, then things won't come to life. Things won't get better. And again, just like displaying like his ambition and drive here on a much bigger and more communal scale.
And then it's after we get that declarative, they could finally come to life, we get the full like breakdown interlude. That's I think the meat of the musicality on this song, right?
Yeah, maybe this is a good part to kind of break things down. And there's no metaphor here. I just like musically, I think it's worth showing off exactly how fucking incredible this whole outro piano section is. Essentially, what I don't know who wrote it. There's like that rumor going around that it was like the 6-year-old or 11-year-old playing, which is not true, right? Like
No,
it was.
They just played it at Las Vegas or something.
Yeah, and then it kind of got. I think whoever posted that kind of got like. She was pretty clear in the message, but they later deleted it probably because all these articles started swirling around falsely claiming that she's actually playing on the album, which would have been really cool and like actually really fitting. And I actually kind of wish that happened because that's like it would have been incredible. But
with the next song being No Child Left
Behind, exactly like, right, yeah. Like, but Kanye obviously picked that up, and that's why he wanted that. He was planning to have 4 pianos played by children at the first listening party, but couldn't pull it off, right?
Yeah.
So that idea is in his mind after the fact. It would have been really hard to, because I'm pretty sure whoever wrote this also played it, and it would have been really hard to like then go back and get it re-recorded, and especially with all these deadlines, like, and it's played beautifully on the album. Anyways, I'm pretty sure it's Jeff Basker. If I were to guess who wrote and performed this part, that would be my guess. But there's like 3 or 4 other songwriters credited, so I don't want to make that claim.
It says on piano on Genius, at least, it says Mark Williams and Zen Michelin Hung.
Do they get writing credits too, though?
They don't have. Mark Williams does.
Okay. So maybe it was them. I just assumed Jeff Basker because he's a great pianist and he's an incredible composer. But regardless, this part is really, really, really cool. So I'm just gonna like break it down as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
So when we get that initial transition into the piano, when the piano is introduced, it's pretty simple. It starts out with this main motif. So it's just one piano playing 8th notes. Very simple, but it's playing that E flat. On top of this, simultaneously, we get 16th notes, which are faster notes on top. So here's that. What's kind of cool about this part is that the groups, usually when you're playing 16th notes, it divides evenly into 4. So you'd usually structure your note pattern in 4s, or at least in an even number. This is playing groups of 3. So it creates like a kind of just a cool rhythmic, like where you kind of, it's like, that's what gives it that kind of washy quality where it's not so rigid. It's kind of like floating. So we hear that kind of steady 8th note and the 16th notes stacked on top of each other. So that sounds like this. So very full, very interesting. Again, that odd grouping gives it like a floating quality. And then on top of that, we get the main riff. That little melodic. Dun, 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 yeah. Dun. So very nice. Nothing too crazy yet. But the thing is, they just keep adding to this layer after layer after layer. I know you've talked a lot about like...
You do need multiple pianos.
Yeah, you need a lot of pianos. There's probably like... I'm only giving you the gist, like the main parts. There's other like floating ambient pianos going on too that I'm not going to cover. But you guys talked about ambient and like minimalism music on this album. Like this could be like a Steve Reich kind of like part. He's a big minimalist composer. So as the part progresses, we get another layer, this time playing 16th note triplets. So that's what I'll play it first.
Ooh.
So ta 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 ta. So it adds a triplet, which are groups of 3. So now let's play that all together.
It reminds me of The Office opening.
Don't say that.
It does.
Don't degrade this. But what's cool is like, okay, so now we have a straight 8th notes. We have 16th notes. Now we have 16th note triplets. So every one of these piano parts is playing slightly different rhythm. That's why they can stack on top of each other and not, they're kind of interacting rather than like turning to mud, which a part like this could very, very easily turn to mud. So that's a really nice texture. I just can listen to this like all day. And again, it's all playing E flat, like that home resolution chord we were listening for. That's why this whole outro section, even though there's going to be tension, like it still feels like really great and like euphoric. And we had to work for it. That's another reason why it feels so good. Like we had to work 3 minutes of tension for it. And then we get these really cool guitar hits. So those are playing on top of the E flat, but they're not playing E flat. So this is what reintroduces tension, because you want the bass note to hit an E flat. That's now what's going to make this feel great and resolved. So we have this now like kind of internal battle with the high pianos playing E flats. Now our grounding harmony is creating tension, playing the chords that we heard, implying the chords that we heard throughout the whole song. So reintroducing that same kind of struggle. So that's what this sounds like altogether. So it's like you're getting resolution, but also not quite there.
Still there.
Yeah, working there towards there. So we get another layer that plays yet another rhythm. So now we're going to get a dotted rhythm. So we've had triplets, we've had 16th, we have eighths, and triplet 16ths. Now we get dotted rhythm, which is essentially when you put a dot on a musical note, it means play it for 1.5 its length. I'm not going to go too much into that. Just believe me when I say it's a different rhythm than everything else that we've heard, and that's what this sounds like.
It's just held a little longer.
Exactly.
Note, right.
It's a play on that first riff that we heard in the very, very beginning. It's just now harmonized and also played in a slightly different rhythm. And this is what it sounds like all together. So again, not muddy, just beautiful, just epic. Like it's just reaching heights. We're not done yet. There's now going to be another rhythm added to this. Now we're going to get eighth note triplets. Before we've had 16th note triplets and 8 notes. Now we have eighth note triplets. And this is in the bass. So it's going to really, this is what really takes it to another level in terms of like this entire part like ramping up and like momentum gaining. So this is what that sounds like. Which on its own, it's almost like power chords if you're familiar with like rock music.
Like Disturbed.
Exactly like Disturbed.
So on its own, kind of simple, but listen to what it does. Now this is everything. These are all the main parts all together.
It's driving.
Yeah, it's driving, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's ramping up to this huge conclusion. And this is where he's saying, you know where to find me. They cannot define me. They could crucify me. So what makes these last run of lines so powerful is that, listen to this. Like it's got tension. It's got resolve. It's got momentum. Like it's all building up. And this is probably a good time to segue now into that last verse where it's really the heart of this. Everything heart of the album is right here. This is like the moment.
And I love too the way that we talked about like the idea of community on this like song, this album, all of that, and then you see like the big moment of climax on the production here is like community, right? Like all these individual aspects of the production coming
community
together.
Of pianos.
Yeah, like bringing their voices to bear in a way that's like working together and creating something beautiful and holistic.
Yeah, I mean, and those the sample voices of the congregation go away when that piano's introduced, but it's like these are kind of replacing those in a way where it's like
right.
We're still getting that kind of that feeling, that really grand and kind of spiritual aspect, but now it's just in music, which is just as powerful.
Well, so then that last verse, which the last verse of the entire album. So when you're like 100 or not 100, an hour and 20 some minutes into this album, like it's all built to kind of like the thoughts placed here. So put some extra emphasis on like who's talked about, what's talked about, how it's talked about.
And this is the biggest moment musically by far on the album in my mind. I mean,
it's what this and Heaven and Hell, right? Like are kind of I guess Heaven and Hell is like one of the most built up, but like this is definitely more complex than what's going on in Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, and just the tone of it too. Like Heaven and Hell's in a minor key, so it's like a little bit darker of a epic quality. This just getting that major tonality, that really bright and just satisfying. it's to me, it's just like, yeah. So I pointed that out to say like, yeah, you're an hour and whatever minutes into this, like this could have so easily fell flat, right? There's only a certain amount of like a person or artist, musician that can build that long and actually have a payoff that feels justified and satisfying. Easily could have a world where like this isn't there, and the album is much different.
Right.
And it makes me wonder, like, because this wasn't played at, I guess it was played at Vegas, so he did have this in the tuck. It just didn't come on the listening parties until the third, which was, I don't know how purposeful him knowing he was going to do 3 eventually, but saving this like was a pretty damn good choice because it made such a powerful moment in the live performance, and now obviously on the album, it's everything.
It is everything.
Totally.
Everything. It's and then getting into that final verse itself, like, you know where to find me, which he had already declared that, like, you know where to find me, writing on a silver lining. So it's like, you know where to find me. Like, now I'm like up with the stars aligned, writing the silver lining. I'm on this high. Like, they cannot define me. Like, you're not going to be able to tell me who I am, what I am, which you think about, like, jail and the idea of, like, what jail is. Like, you're contained within, like, these 4 walls. You're kind of confined, which shares that, what is it? Oh, God. The, like, the last part of a word. Oh, man. It's, like,
the
something.
Suffix?
Yeah, suffix. It shares the suffix of like confined, define.
Yeah.
So there's like a little bit of a connection to like the concept of jail.
Sure.
So they cannot define me. And just you thinking about like the public, right? And how the public tries to define who he can be, what he can be, like
they won't stop trying.
Right. You even think about like LeBron in politics with the infamous like shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
And it's just like, people can be more than one thing. Just because he's an artist doesn't mean that he can't also be an entrepreneur. Doesn't mean he can't also be like this, and this other
president
thing. So because he doesn't let society define him, he says, so they crucify me. So yeah, they cannot define me, so they crucify me, which in terms of like the devil get behind me, payoff, like that phrase coming from Jesus explaining that, yeah, they're going to come for me, they're going to crucify me, and then I'm going to come back to life. Like I'm going to like come back, don't worry, like everything will be good. And now here Ye himself is like identifying like similarly in terms of saying like devil get behind me, and now they're going to crucify me, and then I'm going to come back to life. So there's just like another layer of the idea of coming back to life, and coming to life. So, and then he says, how so phased when I leave? So you get like, they crucify you, like they complain about you, they like punish you, but then they're upset when you leave. Like when you get out of the public eye, when you aren't participating in the Grammys or the music industry, or you're quiet in pop culture, now everybody's upset that you're not around, that you're not like saying things, that you're absence. So it's kind of getting back almost like a reversal of like mad when she home, sad when she gone, where instead of Ye feeling that way about like Kim or the public, it's like these people feeling that way about him. They're mad, like they're crucifying when he's around, and then upset when he's gone.
Right.
Yeah. What's that quote? There's some quote Kanye has. I think it was in that an interview he did around Jesus is King. Maybe it was that GQ one. I don't remember. But basically, he said like his superpower is his ability to challenge the status quo, to like not say the right thing, the thing you're supposed to say. Like in a way, like he's presenting himself as a necessary part of the zeitgeist, that he will do something like that we actually need somebody who will be like Kanye and like say these things that maybe don't sound quite right, but like kind of have some truth to them, and like make you like think about what's normal and like what's been accepted. And I wonder if maybe that's what he's getting at a little bit, is like, I get crucified for the things I say because they're so confrontational and unconventional, but it phases you when I'm gone. Like I need to be present. Like his presence is important. I feel like that might be a little bit of what he's getting at, and that's just like the core of Kanye's being. Like that's his definition. Like that's what he represents to this world.
Yeah, I also think about I always thought about this too as death, like just the way that we treat celebrities generally.
Right.
Like we love to build them up, then we love to watch them fall. But anytime someone dies, I feel like the reality of that dynamic kind of hits us, and we're forced to be like, then we all of a sudden start talking 100% positively about them and miss them and all this stuff. But it's like, how many times have we seen that happen? It's like, actually, I've talked about it here, actually, like a big fear that I have with Kanye is exactly that. So that's kind of where my mind goes also with that line, just knowing he knows that, I'm sure he's seen people like Prince, or there's a million examples of artists leaving too soon and the world mourning and not showing the flowers necessarily enough when they're here, instead crucifying them. So I think that's another kind of level to it.
You even think about like Amy Winehouse, and I think it's probably forgotten in some ways at this point, but how hounding the media was of Amy Winehouse, and kind of like an excessive way that kind of foreshadowed our current like social media age. But
same with Mac Miller too. We're doing him right now, and like, once he started dating Ariana, it was like, again, lifting him up. They're like the prize couple, and then when they broke up, and he he had a DUI, he ran into a light pole, and he was all over the tabloids. Mac Miller's, it was everywhere, and not a good light. And then he passes away a month later, and it's just like, okay. I hope you guys can sleep at night, because you know what I mean? Like, it just happens with so many people where they become dehumanized. Part of, that's the downfall of fame that Kanye talks about on Twisted Fantasy, is like that dehumanization and all that. So I think that dynamic is definitely there.
Yeah. And you can even view that in the next lines, right? Like, so you crucify me when I'm alive, then you're so like upset when I like pass away. Like, then you come and purify me, come and sanctify me. So it's like the artist in the afterlife is purified and sanctified. But then you could also just read it as like, while Kanye is like still alive, right?
Right.
While
No, for sure.
Like stirring the pots and doing these things, he's just saying to like God or to the public.
For
I'm
sure.
guessing.
I think what you guys said is the base layer, the top layer, for sure.
Yep. Come and purify me, come and sanctify me. Like, we already had pure souls. We've already had these moments of Ye saying like, redeem me, save me. And now he's making sure that gets stated again in this final verse of the album. Purify me, sanctify me, with sanctify just being like, bless me, right? You, the air that I breathe, which is thinking back to God breathed a little bit again. The ultra light beam, and like coming to life, like, you're the air that I breathe, you're giving me life. The ultra light beam, like the life of Pablo opened with ultralight beam. I know there are people that have applied this to Kim, like he's saying that Kim's his ultralight beam. You could view that also as just like his relationship with society, right? Like, he thrives off of this like love-hate relationship that he has with like the industry, with society. But at the end of the day, there is ultralight beam. But then I think like the easiest way of taking it is just like God, like God's the ultralight beam, like faith. And then ultralight beam was, as we talked about, kind of this intro track to the life of Pablo that set the stage for everything that followed. So you're kind of establishing ultralight beam as kind of the ideal and the level that you want to be on, but that you're going to fall into this like faith and war. You're kind of torn between the highs and lows of life and the trials that God sends at you, which is a big part of the life of Pablo, is that tension between like indulgence in sin and the desire to sin with like responsibility and family and all of that. So he's just kind of like siding with the ultralight beam aspect of things. And then brought a gift to Northie, good old Northwest, making an appearance on this album. All she want was Nikes, which damn. Which, like, you know, you bring a gift to Northie, which is meaningful in terms of like not just like a parent bringing a gift to a child, but given what we know about the state of the relationship and like the separation between Kim and Kanye, like for him to bring a gift to Northie, it has that extra emotion to it, right? Like this is now the father, like the divorced parent trying to like make amends with his daughter, like connect with his daughter, and all she want was Nikes. So it's like the gift that he brought wasn't good enough. She had something else in mind, which I feel like is a common like parent trope. You try to get your kid what you think they want, what you hope they want, but often they want something completely different.
Oh, is that how you? So I read that line differently. I thought he brought her Nikes because that's what I thought. That's what she wanted, and this is not about me. Like, so which in Kanye's mind, I think that's a huge deal, right? Like, because we know, he has his own shoe company. That's a direct rival, and he's willing to, in his mind, that's a big thing. Like, I'm willing to give my daughter what she wants, even though it's like at direct conflict with my broader goals.
See, I got to the same conclusion, but it was more the idea that like he brought this gift, she says she wants Nikes, and then his conclusion is like, you know what, this isn't about me, like I'll get my daughter Nikes if she wants Nikes. Got it. So coming to a similar conclusion, but just seeing a little more tension in like what he, like the gift he brought, but it's also vague enough or like general enough that like the gift he could have brought was Nikes, knowing what she wanted. Okay.
It could have been Crocs.
Right, he might have brought some Crocs, but the idea probably being too that like he gives her a lot of Adidas, he gives her a lot of Yeezys, he gives her a lot of his own brand, and like you would think as his kid should just be happy to have like dad's like brand, but she's not even thinking in that way. She's like thinks Nikes are cool, which Kanye has talked a lot about, like the childlike perspective and how innocent it is, how pure it can be, how it transcends the things that society tries to teach us. And he's talked himself about like wanting to wear Nikes. He loves Jordans. Like he doesn't want to have to be like anti-Nike just because he's pro Adidas. That having those boundaries is kind of ridiculous, which is similar to what he was talking about on Pure Souls with the Moes and the Folks, right? It's like we have more in common than we have differences, and this is like not about our own stuff. There's a bigger issue going on here, and we can't let these like the branding of things cause tension between us.
The branding's owned by the corporate, it's kind of that whole thread is there, which he's very adamant against, especially since that Drink Champs interview. He made that very clear.
So this gets at another one of the like people talking about like, how's this song about more than just like his relationship with Kim? Like this, it's like one of these moments. This is one of the big lines on the album is him talking about like his daughter wanting Nikes and him like thinking that's fine, not thinking like, oh, woe is me, like why doesn't he's just like, no, like like she wants Nikes, I'm gonna get her Nikes. Like this is the perspective we should have. We shouldn't have these lines and definitions. And like he wants to feel that same freedom that North feels, just to wear what she likes, to get what she likes, which is why that next line, God is still alive, so I'm free, like why it connects to that, because the sense of freedom is tied to the idea that his daughter will wear Nike, that he'll get his daughter Nike. It's getting to the freedom in terms of like being a single man now, at the freedom of like being out of the societal jails that he felt he had been put in, and deciding himself like, you know what, I don't have to be in these like constructed prisons that the media has put me in or that the industry has put me in, but then also freedom from like the corporates, like battles and wars and all of this stuff that try to train you. It's him breaking out of the simulation at all of these various levels and just being awash in that sense of freedom.
What was that song? I mean, so far in terms of progression, discography wise, what's that diss track called? The Nike diss track?
Facts.
Facts. Yeah. It's like he was at one point making diss tracks about another brand, which is in the strange way that the whole Drake thing on this album, you know, and like obviously he doesn't want to be doing that, you know, like he'd rather get to this place of community amongst people like Drake. He'd rather be free of these corporate kind of, you know, wars that they feel like they have to be in because these corporate heads are rivals, and at the end of the day they're getting all the money. Like, no, I'm breaking free from all that unnecessary conflict that society has set up.
Yep. Which is
doesn't Kanye talk about that on Facts? Like the song ends with this death and like him realizing that like this is so much more tragic and like so much more important than like my feud with a company. It's just like again like the cycle of Kanye, this beef he has with Drake. Like Pure Souls is basically No Mistakes Part 2. Like he basically is doing the same thing, saying like, hey, like we're too rich to fight, let's overcome this stuff, like this is all stupid. Like seeing him like keep getting to this point and being able to move past it with like each and every little thing, except here it does feel way bigger. It feels just so much more cathartic. I mean, with everything Cole's pointed out about the music and everything we've talked about this season and the journey Kanye's gone on, the personal journey, it definitely feels bigger than all that. Like he's reaching a point where this kind of stuff is now in the past. Although in that Drink Champs interview, he went after a lot of people. So I don't know when it ends with Kanye.
That's always the thing. That's always the thing. Like this arrival point wasn't quite reflected, at least in my interpretation, in the Drink Champs thing. I think in his mind it is, because he's just like saying what he feels. And I feel like the stuff he said about Big Sean, it's like he's joking, like kind of like playing it up for the camera kind of thing, and at the end of the day he probably would be homies with him. Like in his mind, I don't think he understands quite how his words can, you know, really affect other people. Sometimes, you know, like he wants to say the things and then like be cool, you know what I mean?
Which in that Drink Champs interview he did talk about, like, who was it? He was talking to like Erykah Badu. Is that who it was? Where he talked about, like, he said, I'm the leader. And she's like, well, you're a leader.
Lauryn Hill.
Yeah. Lauryn Hill. It was Lauryn Hill. Of course, Lauryn Hill.
Fucking perfect. Yeah. Such a gem, obviously, from someone like that. But like, because what did he say? Not to like take this too much of a tangent, but he did say that, like, when he was talking about John Lennon and like Big Sean, he was saying, like, I'm just here to like reorient the structure. Or he said something to the effect of like, I'm just here to like realign us, like, so I'm going to say some shit, but at the end of the day it's like for the better. I want us, like, you guys are off like making these, you know, democratic campaigns. I think it was the thing that he's mad about, but like, hey, no, like, we're together, like, I'm the leader, like. So I think in his mind, it's like the Red Hat thing. It's like in his mind it's like there's this overarching goal, but ever Kanye, he's going about it in, like, you know, in a very Kanye way.
A conflict-driven manner, which I could see in like the Drink Champs interview, that like overarching, like, I am free from like caring about a lot of the things that hold other people back, so I am going to like carry us forward, which is some of what we're saying on like that the story with Peter and like Devil Get Behind Me. Jesus essentially starts saying like, I'm gonna lead us, and if you're gonna like follow, you need to do this and this, but like, get behind me, like, I'm going to lead. And then I feel like Pure Souls was also him saying like, hey, I'm going to like be a leader in this community, I'm gonna be a leader in this industry, I'm gonna be a leader of the people, so like, listen up. And in the Drink Champs interview, he seemed to be like on that, even though there still are like the barbs and the thorns amongst the rose bush. You're still having him feel like very empowered to talk on some things that like other people like wouldn't, and that he's going to try and do some things that other people can't, just given his financial freedom, given like where he's at with everything. So that idea of like, God is still alive, so I'm free. Like, here we are. Like, God is in my corner. I'm free from all these things that are like, have been like having me feeling pinned, and having me feeling penned.
Exactly.
Like I am ready to write in pen, so to speak. So he's floating on a silver lining. So when I'm free, I'm free. And he's already said, like, I am free. So it's just kind of doubling down on this idea, like, I'm free, like, truly free. And you read that, of course, in context of the divorce. You read that in context to the first song being Jail, right? And you also read that in context to feeling some closure with his mom and not feeling like he lost her necessarily, but still feeling like a connection to her in a way with her presence on Praise God and Donda and what he talked about on Jesus Lord. And then the next song being No Child Left Behind, and the sense of like connection that you still have because you haven't been left behind, and that connection with like God, right? Like he's done miracles on me. So there's so much closure, and I want to just talk again and again about the connection between Jail and this, but that's really all that it is. Like the album starts with like being in jail, and it ends with when I'm free, I'm free. Like I'm free.
It's almost like he did it on purpose.
Yeah, that's the easy way to tell if there's like some kind of art. I mean, it's the same thing that you did with Igor, right? Like when you first put on Igor, I'm sure you noted like what's the first like notes that we hear, and then when you got to the last song, you're listening like, oh, is there like a callback to some of the first notes? And you're like, yep, it goes full circle. Yeah, here it is. Did it like Tyler even retweet that when you posted that?
He liked the tweet.
He liked it. Yeah. So
yeah,
in narratives you often look at the beginning and the end to see if they match, to see if they contrast, to see if one's like a direct response to the other, and in this case, like, yes.
Yeah, it was like, I think even the Adele thing was really cool to see, just in terms of artists deliberately telling a story, very deliberate about track listing. I'm not sure if you guys saw, but Adele had Spotify take off the shuffle feature as the default play feature on her new album, and I think that's now across all premium users, because she pushed for that, and because she said artists tell stories, and our track lists are part of that story. And I think, yeah, Igor's a great example. Even the Mac Miller stuff we're doing right now, he does the same thing here on Donda at this 20 whatever song Odyssey hour and whatever, you know. And again, it's amidst all that, there's intention, at least with these you know, two pillars on either side of the album. Yeah, it's just it's so obvious, especially with the Larry Hoover stuff and like this idea of jail being a through line through the whole thing. Like this is absolutely the perfect way to end. I'll just say, I just would point out the evolution of come to life motif. So it starts with wish you had another life, progresses into make it all come to life. Maybe it'll come alive. They could finally come to life. And then this is what I love. He doesn't ever say it came to life. He says I'm free, because that is what happens when you come to life. Like he found it. It's like he doesn't have to say I come to life. I'm free. Like it does everything that you would want in terms of a payoff. And again, to recap the evolution of the pen, it's like it started out being pinned and being in a pen, then figuring out I was writing in pencil and I need to commit to writing in pen, and then we get I'm free ties that bow also together. And musically, I'll just, you know, you guys know where this is going, but as soon as he says I'm free, all that stuff drops out that I built up, and it kind of gets to a more bare texture, and there's a new rhythm that's introduced that I didn't transcribe out, but when we play the clip, it's pretty obvious. Everything kind of dies away, and then there's a new swelling kind of rhythm, and then it ends in this grand E flat major home chord, beautiful. There's a little beautiful twinkling pianos, like which I always think of high pianos like little light bulbs. Like there's like, you know, it's tied like just sparkling or like fireworks or embers or whatever. It's like it's the grand finale. It's the big payoff. It's the I'm free, transitioning into the E flat major, finally resolving on that thing we've been waiting 6 minutes now to hear and feel. It's all there musically, lyrically. It's like fucking perfect.
Hell yeah.
What a track.
Yeah.
What a track. Yeah. Man. It's so good.
Is it Kanye's best song? That was my big debate coming in here. Is like, am I going to try to claim this is Kanye's best song?
I mean, it might be doing like the most of any Kanye song, like in terms of like what it's resolving. And now that we know what it's resolving musically, it's just like the like what it reaches, like what it accomplishes, how it ties so many ideas together. I mean, yeah, it's epic stuff right there.
It definitely feels like one of his most like layered, like nuanced, meaningful from both the like the production and the lyrical aspects. I always get torn on like songs because it's like I always think of like best song is a blend of like what you can just put on and people like bop to, versus like best in terms of like craftsmanship. And it's like is like stronger the best Kanye song just because it's something that's like has some dynamics to it, but also like is catchy enough that everybody like it's one of the few songs to ever go diamond, right? I think from like a pre-2010 era. I think it's like the 5th song to go diamond in that way. So but I always have to give like weight to like this song pays off on like so much from Ye's discography, right? Yeah. It's calling back to, I mean, how many albums did we reference over the course of just this episode? Like it's tying back to like his relationship with Kim and how that developed over like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Yeezus, The Life of Pablo. And even that is a payoff to like where his life was going on 808s and Heartbreak and the loneliness he felt. And then you think back to like what fame meant to him in those early days of College Dropout and Late Registration, and you come to hear like him longing for freedom from some of that stuff. Ooh. It's up there, man.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's up there. Threads.
No, I think that's a good point, the discography point. Like, not to be morbid or anything, but if this was his final song, like on an album, like I know there's the epilogue coming, but like just what you said, it's such. If we're like you guys do, looking at his discography as one large arc, and then you brought up earlier, Travis, like not most of the albums don't actually resolve. They end on this questionable note, this unsettling feeling that's still being lost. And Jesus is King was trying to get to this level. And like you guys have talked a lot about on this season, like Donda is the extension of Jesus is King. It's the beefier, it's him putting all the pieces together, where now Jesus is King feels a little bit like a warm-up, like someone getting the tools in their arsenal, right? And so creatively, I don't know, it's like I love that it doesn't have drums, because that's such a staple of Kanye. Like he's not afraid to have no drums. Such a rare quality, because let's say 85%, if I'm being nice, of like hip-hop producers, like drums are your crutch. Like that's your everything. Right. Without drums, like half these producers wouldn't know what to do. Like no don't but like that's what I feel like really sets Kanye apart, is like the way he uses drums, but also the way he doesn't use drums, because you don't hear that a lot in hip hop. I don't know. It's just when I put together the musical stuff, because I only recently discovered this whole thing like this last week or so, and I already loved the song, and so that's what put me over the edge to be like, fuck, is this actually Kanye's best song? Because musically you can easily make that case, like right. And then the way that all those micro resolutions build the same exact way that the come to life motif, the pin thing morphs over time throughout the song, all leading up to this big I'm free, perfect, like we're talking about, economy of words here and expressions, and finding just the perfect way to word things. I'm free. Like what better and most minimalistic way to state exactly what you're aiming for and achieving, saying I am this thing, not like I'm striving towards this thing, I am it, like it happened. And then how that ties in together with not only the LP3, him setting himself on fire, this beautiful metaphor about transformation, but also him changing his name, like We haven't really discussed that as much as like you guys have, obviously, but like generally speaking, like that kind of is a big deal. Like someone changes their name, and his name has so much equity and, you know what I mean, and value to it. To change your name legally to Ye, in line with all this other transformation stuff, like, I don't know, I'm Free just seems like it's like the fucking moment of his entire discography, you know?
Yeah, we used to talk about St. Pablo, like, kind of being the perfect end of the discography. If he never made another album and you ended with St. Pablo, it would feel like pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But now this, like, it just kind of makes like St. Pablo feel not small in retrospect, because St. Pablo is still like a very like meaningful, big, impressive song when you're listening to it. But if you sat down and you listened to like 10 hours of the discography, right, like College Dropout all the way up through Donda, I think you would just say like, holy cow, like what a project this is, what a payoff this is, what an experience this was. And to have Come to Life be this final hurrah just feels so next level that it's hard to argue about like the impact that this song can have on you.
Yeah. The fire thing, that's a good point. I can't believe we didn't really even talk about it that much. The fact that like there's this whole scene of rebirth that happens at the third listening party, and how rebirth has been such a motif on Kanye's albums lately as he's tried to completely, I mean, thinking of the life of Pablo and how he wanted to move past this life, but then like slowly, he could see ghosts, Jesus is King. There's constantly been this idea of like becoming a kid again, like being washed in water, like finding yourself. Like this is it, changing his name, like being lit on fire, like being made anew. This penultimate song's called Come to Life. I mean, he's here, he did it.
Yep. I think we did it. Is this it? Are we done? We have concluded?
Did we do it? Oh my gosh.
That's epic. Well, that's fitting.
I think we've
had to be
enough.
an epic for an epic song like this.
Yes. Yes. Well, Cole, thank you very much for joining us. This was awesome. Definitely, I think, our most epic episode of all time.
Oh yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
not
nice
as long as the Off the Grid episode, but we had to split that into 2 separate days. So this is the longest single take we've ever done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But glad to have shared the journey of the song with you and get all your insights into the production, because it's just
it was awesome.
Yeah, what a song for the production. Anything else you want to say about the album, or anything else you want to plug while you're here?
Just Dissect. If people haven't listened yet, it's a lyrical musical analysis, just like we do here, just in this kind of scripted form, 1 album per season. We're doing Mac Miller on Spotify right now. The only other thing I'd point out is I love, and you guys are going to talk all about this next episode, but just the way, like, you could easily have ended the album here in the same way you could probably end a movie after the big fight and the hero wins, but it never ends there, right? Like there's always, I don't know if there's a word for it or a term for it, but there's always the last little 5-minute scene where the person's like back at home or doing something regular, where it's just like this kind of wind down, come down, like let's just take a breath. And I feel like Kanye does that with this. Like we get the big resolution, I'm Free, and the big E flat. Could easily end there, but then we get No Child Left Behind, very meditative, calm, kind of credits rolling or whatever. Like it's just perfect. Like it's really, really, really cool. Like amidst all of Donda's flaws, like, you know, I still think this is the best album of the year. I think I came to that conclusion. Kanye, at this point in his career, I'm going to kind of go off on Kanye because it's my only opportunity, because I can't talk about Kanye anywhere else. So just like for someone, what LP is this?
10.
So on his 10th album, like that's beautiful sentiment, actually. His 10th album, he's still, I think Madonna actually said it best, he's still striving to fail. I don't know if you guys saw that quote, but like she said, which I thought was a really great way to put it. Like he's still reaching. Like there's so many artists that would just like rest on their laurels. Someone struggling for audience like Kanye is now slightly, after the 2 albums that didn't have much commercial success, could easily went back to like the College Dropout, and just really tried to rehash what got him here, and like did that whole thing which you see a million people do in their career, struggling to kind of reinvent themselves and find relevance again. And like, what I admire so much about him, which always brings me back to Kanye, is that he's fucking gonna go for it. And he went for it on this album. He swung huge. Again, I think there's flaws on the album, but it kind of, when he fucking hits like no one else. Jail is like a song we've never heard before. Jesus Lord is like a song we've never heard before. Come to Life, I think out of all of those is like, what even is this song? Like, where do you put this song? Like, it transcends category. And for someone like him who came from hip hop, was a hip hop producer, to now where he is now, like, man, like Jail specifically and Come to Life, I feel like are such these pillars in his career where you can point to and just be like, no one else can make music like this. Like, no one else can do it. It's like no one else is doing it. No one else can do it. And it's like, that's just what sets him apart. And I just love that he continually evolves his sound, doesn't rest on what got him here, and just keeps pushing, finds new ways to innovate with music at, in his mid 40s, 10 albums later. So all that to say is like, fucking Donda's great. Amidst its flaws, it's so great. You guys have been doing a great job covering it. And yeah, I was just glad to shine some musical insight on this wonderful song.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. And denouement is the term that you're looking for.
Okay.
The part after the climax where all the things, like all the threads kind of get resolved and come together. So you might see like the main characters back at home, just like reestablishing. I'm thinking of The Incredibles specifically, like after all the battle with the bad guy, you just see them kind of back at home doing their thing, and it brings everything full circle. You see that they're going to be fine moving forward. That's the denouement or denouement.
Just like the end of the Disturbed album,
like,
right?
Nomi's.
Yes. What were you saying, Travis?
I was going to be, it's like when Nomi leaves Las Vegas and she hitches her ride of the same guy that brought her to Vegas, and she realizes that she doesn't need to.
Yes.
I don't want to get into it, but it's like that.
Or like on Eyes Wide Shut, when they're back in the store shopping, and she says, "What do you want to do?" And she says, "Fuck," and like, ties the whole,
Actually, it really does. Like
it is that.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
And then, like, on the Disturbed album, the first song is Prayer, the last song is Darkness, and you get the lines, darkness, cover me, deny everything, slowly walk away to breathe again, on my own, dare to believe.
For those of you who are just listening, he's reading this from a tattoo on his arm.
Just got it on a scroll, just right down the forearm. All right, then. Well, until next time, when we finish up the Donda journey with No Child Left Behind.
Travis,
we
need you to stay away.
Yeah. Keep it loopy.